now. Prime Minister will meet Prince Charles in Rwanda today as they attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 23rd of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the Prime Minister and the Prince of Wales will hold talks in Rwanda today for the first time since the Prince privately criticised the government's migrant policy.
It'll take place during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, where the PM is expected to focus on the economic benefits of the 54-member organisation.
Now, talks to avert a second national rail strike, they broke down again last night. Millions of you facing another day of travel chaos. It comes as the government prepares to lay out legislation that would allow agency workers to cover striking staff.
The Chancellor has defended restoring the so-called pensions triple lock, which could see state pensions rise by 10%. It comes after yesterday's announcement that inflation has risen to 9.1%.
And thanks very much indeed. Good to have you on board, whether you're listening, whether you're watching. We're here until 9:30. Hope you will be too. You know what to do if you want to get involved. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
And you also know by now, we hope, that you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube. You can get all the latest there on the big stories everyone's talking about.
I don't like that word subscribe. It always suggests to me as if you're paying something.
No.
You know, you just click on a button and we're there.
Takes
you
a
can't get
second.
rid of us after that. Back after this.
So all eyes to Africa today. Our top story, the Prime Minister is holding talks with Prince Charles in Rwanda during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
So it's the first time the two men have met following the Prince of Wales's comments calling the government's Rwanda migrant plan appalling.
Boris Johnson is expected to use the summit to promote the economic benefits of the Commonwealth. Writing in the Telegraph today, on Monday, he said the 54-member organisation is of immense practical value for trade. Well, joining us now for more on this is the political consultant and strategist Peter Barnes. Very good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning.
Look, let's start, shall we, first of all, with this meeting between Boris Johnson and Prince Charles, following on from those comments in private that became public, that Prince Charles was appalled at this asylum plan that Boris Johnson has come up with. Do you think that's going to be an awkward meeting?
Well, I don't think it's going to be the funnest meeting that's going to happen there, but I expect we'll hear press briefings of it was a frank conversation or a robust discussion of ideas. Will probably be the briefing that we'll hear out of Number 10 and the Palace later on this week. But I have to admit, this it's a good opportunity for Boris really to kind of come front and centre on this policy that does really have quite a bit of popular support, but a lot of people still have their reservations about it. So any kind of defence he can put up will always be a good one.
He knows it's popular. He knows that. And I think a lot of people would say, right, OK, even if you have some misgivings about it, what's your solution to all of this? And people can't really come up with a solution.
Yeah, that seems to be one of all the critics who come out against the policy. When they ask that exact question, they don't seem to have an answer to it. Mm-hmm. Well, what are you going to do to break up the criminal gangs that are feeding on so much human misery? What's your solution? You've had so many people come up against the taggings, or against kind of lists, or even the Rwanda policy itself. Like, they don't seem to have an actual plan on what they would do to...
I'd love to be a fly on the wall if Johnson said to the Prince, you know, OK, what would you do?
Yeah, I don't think Boris will actually come out and say that, but it would be fun if he did. And like you said, I'd love to be there if he actually did.
Interestingly, Boris Johnson, during his trip to Kigali, won't be visiting the accommodation that has been put to one side for asylum seekers if and should they ever arrive on Rwandan soil. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I don't know. I think this is a little bit of a mistake on the Prime Minister's part there. I think kind of sunlight's one of the best kind of disinfectants, and anything you can do to kind of reassure the public and kind of show that it's not what you're hearing from certain members of the press or from certain publications or whatever. I think you should do it. But I do think this is probably where this entire thing might go a little bit wrong for him, because the attack line will then be, if you're not going to visit, why should anybody else?
I think you're right. I mean, you put that very well, that disinfectant analogy there. And it is a chance, if he is proud of it and if it does hold public support, walk us around, show us what's going to happen, where it is, that you've got nothing to fear on this one. So we think the optics of that is not right.
What about the Commonwealth itself? What does it say about the Commonwealth that it's decided to have its heads meeting there in Kigali, a country that, you know, is well known to not be democratic. And we've got an expert coming on later talking about how it's a brutal, repressive regime.
Well, it's long been a theory of like major Western democracies that you help fix many of the nations and fix these human rights problems by bringing them into the fold. And kind of once you kind of make them play by your rules, then you can kind of highlight it a little bit more, and you can particularly put more pressure on, particularly because the Commonwealth is looking for as much trade as it can get. You can put a lot of pressure on Rwanda and other nations within the Commonwealth with these kind of accusations, at least, to start playing by the rules a little bit more.
It's quite a powerful picture. Prince Charles saying this is what humans can do to other humans, and this is the genocide memorial in the Rwandan capital. It's a very powerful picture in the front of the Telegraph. You can't really see it from there, but what you see is a lot of skulls and people who were killed, including children, in that genocide back in 1994. I mean, so recent history on all of that.
So how do you think it will all pan out, you know, in terms of this Rwandan flight as well, the European Court of Human Rights? We had yesterday lots of talk about the Bill of Rights. Do you think that this will eventually ever come to fruition as a policy?
I think, yeah, it will do at some point, but there's a lot of legal battles ahead on this policy. But I think Number 10 has been braced for this since it was first a whisper around Whitehall, let alone a major government policy. I think people know what the opposition to this policy are like and how they'll use the courts as much as they can. And I think Number 10 are ready for a fight, because I expect this policy to, if it's successful in the way that it's looking like it might be, to be somewhat of a major re-election policy in a couple of years.
The whole talk, Peter, where the Prime Minister mentioned earlier this year that the Commonwealth could be immense use when it came to trade, all very well and good, but could you just explain to people, unless you can't explain, why we haven't tapped into that or made the most of that so far? Would that have been European Union rules and trade barriers preventing us doing that?
But to a degree, yes. So the European Union, once you're kind of within the single market, has very strict rules about what you can and can't do over trade. And the European Union, really towards the mid-90s, were very keen on Britain distancing itself from the Commonwealth and kind of having a much more internal focus. So I actually think now that we've had Brexit and we're actually trying to take advantage of Brexit, I think reconnecting with the Commonwealth, not just for trade-wise, but culturally as well, I think is a really important thing that we should be doing. And I think it's, for a lot of people who supported Brexit, it's about time, really, that the government moved down this path.
It's interesting. I was just reading up on a UN human rights conference in Geneva that took place last year, where British officials called out Rwanda on its record of extrajudicial killings, the disappearances of opponents and torture. But once the asylum seekers deal was signed, the tone from the UK government abruptly changed. What would you say was that all about?
I think it's one of those, one, it's not a great optics, but I think on a practical level, the way that it'll be explained will be friends calling out friends and demanding better from trading partners and particularly nations within the Commonwealth. Like I said, it's not the best line. I do remember reading the same thing and I thought, oh, hello, that's quite interesting. But I don't know. I think when it comes to international diplomacy, things and tones change very quickly, pretty much overnight, if not hourly on some occasions. So I think this might be one of those.
One of those.
OK, Peter, appreciate all of that. Peter is a Conservative political consultant and strategist. Thank you very much for coming in. Anybody getting anywhere is a bit of an achievement today because it's day 2 of the national rail strike.
Yeah, and talks broke down again last night with the RMT union accusing the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, of wrecking negotiations. OK, so we've got Paul Hawkins out and about, who's there at London Waterloo station, and unsurprisingly, it looks pretty quiet, Paul.
Yeah, morning, Eamonn. Morning, Isabel. Yeah, very quiet at the moment. In fact, the station doesn't open for another 20 minutes. And looking at the board, first train is at 7:15 to Basingstoke. 20% of trains, just like they were on Tuesday, running across the country. So, you know, very few services today. Difference between today Today here in the capital and Tuesday, though, is that there's no tube strike, so people can still get to the outskirts of London, then jump on the tube and make their way in. Of course, it does mean that with much fewer national rail services, a lot more people will try to squeeze on the tube. So you can expect the tube to be very, very, very busy today. Other people trying to walk. That should be interesting later when they're trying to make their way home during a thunderstorm that's forecast to hit the capital. See how people are feeling about the strikes then. And the alternative, of course, is to take the bike or jump on a bus. So we do expect the other modes of transport in the capital to be busy later. As you say, the two sides at the moment, the RMT and rail employers, they're locked effectively, and one saying to the other that you're lying, and one saying, yeah, well, you're holding up the talks, well, you started this, and they're not really making any progress at all.
In agency workers, where are we with that?
Yeah, so the government has announced plans that they want to change the law. It could become effective by, well, really as soon as mid-July. This involves changing laws from the 1970s so agency workers can fill gaps that are left by the strikes. Now, one would have thought that there are going to be some jobs that can't easily be filled by agency workers, and indeed the unions have said that could compromise safety. Network Rail have welcomed the change in legislation. They've said that while key safety critical roles require many months of training, they say there are many other roles where they could be used, such as in security operations, which would make a real difference. So a big change there to the law, which, you know, could thwart the RMT's attempts. This is the second day of strikes. We've got another one on Saturday, and then they haven't announced any more dates, but the RMT boss, Mick Lynch, has said that they are planning more dates for the rest of the summer and that this action will carry on for as long as possible.
OK, Paul, thank you very much indeed. I suppose we should point out to anybody setting out this morning, particularly in London, tubes are up and running. It is just rail strikes, just in inverted commas, rail strikes.
You say that. You say that. Bye, Paul.
Bye, Paul. Thank you.
There's a big thunderstorm predicted for half of the country.
That's true.
And anything that is running could be in danger of not running because of lightning strikes.
What, tubes?
Yeah.
I suppose some are overground, aren't
yeah.
they? Of course,
yeah.
There you go.
You see, it's just, I told you before, it's when you question me, it's always
At
you
my
end up-
peril.
At your peril.
Yeah.
It is at your peril.
Silly old me.
But there's nothing like, I mean, I could see the storm clouds gathering just on the way into work this morning.
I love a storm. I really
Do
do.
you?
I love a summer storm, not a winter storm, and I like a brief one. I think it's a sort of tropical thing.
I think there's nothing as scary as thunder and lightning.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I love to see the display in the sky. I love feeling cosy inside, and then I love the clean, fresh smell afterwards.
Just don't stand under a tree. At 12 minutes past 6, let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. And the UK Health Security Agency is urging people to make sure their polio vaccines are up to date. This is after traces of the virus were detected in a routine sewage inspection in London. Now, polio was officially eradicated in Britain in 2003, and the discovery was at a treatment works which serves 4 million people in the north and east of London. While the risk of contamination is low, people are being warned the virus can cause paralysis and in rare cases can be fatal.
The Education Secretary says a teacher's strike would be unforgivable after the National Education Union said it will strongly encourage its members to walk out over pay and workload. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Nadine Zahawi said it would be irresponsible as young people have suffered more disruption than any generation due to the pandemic.
The Glastonbury Festival could be facing intense thundery downpours, as we were just talking about. The Met Office has issued a yellow thunderstorm warning for southern England. Poor weather conditions expected to add to travel disruption as well. That's all you need, a bit of rain at Glastonbury.
Yeah, those days are behind me. I've been to a few muddy Glastonburys. I did enjoy them in my 20s.
Did you?
But this side of 40 or this close to 40, I'm not interested anymore. Yeah.
So what is the difference? What is the income? You like your luxuries now?
Well, I don't know, I'm just a bit more boring now. I think when you're young and you're with all your friends, you've got nothing better to do, but I'm knackered and I've got small children and I really don't need to flog myself in my spare time.
But there's that question of how old should you be, or can you be to go to a festival? And there was the story of the lady who was over 80 years of age. And there she is. What on earth possesses her? I don't know. Nothing against her going if she wants to go, but I could think of nothing worse. But well done to her.
But look, she's with some youngsters, maybe her daughter and a granddaughter. And you know what? When I'm a granny, if I get an opportunity to hang out with my grandchildren, they want me to go to a festival.
Her grandchildren are 60 and 70. What are you talking about?
Sorry, couldn't really see. But the lady on the right, I thought
weren't
maybe
that
looked
young.
younger. Oh, really? Well, anyway, I just think it's nice. A big intergenerational mixing. If that's a way to do it, why not?
OK. Today is a birthday. It marks 6 years since
Yes.
Britain voted to leave the European Union.
Yes, but it's left many feeling frustrated, with critics asking if Brexit has actually been delivered.
Well, let's... Sorry. Yes. No, you do it.
Okay.
Let's to Ben Habib. Ben is a former Brexit Party MEP. Ben, are you celebrating today?
Am I celebrating? I think the enthusiasm which goes with the naivety of assuming that we would have Brexit delivered once we voted for it has long waned with me. You know, we're stuck in, as you opened with, you know, we're stuck in some sort of trench warfare trying to get Brexit properly across the line. And in many respects, even though I'm not a member of a political party and the Brexit Party has sort of disbanded, if you like, changed into something else, you know, I'm at the forefront of that political battle. I'm challenging the government on the Northern Ireland Protocol, which I see as a wedge in the middle of the United Kingdom. Really an awful thing for the government to exist, for the government to have agreed in order to get Brexit across the line. And so I'm fighting that battle. And I'm also fighting battles, which I don't think many people are aware of, but, you know, the government has signed us up in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement to a level playing field with the EU. So we are restricted from changing state aid laws, competition laws, employment laws, environmental laws in this country. Net zero, this is something listeners should really listen to. Net zero may be a British initiative insofar as the legislation was passed by Theresa May, but Boris Johnson elevated that to an international treaty status because we're not allowed to regress from that legislation going forward. So we are locked into net zero. We're locked into all these things which put us in this lunar orbit around EU regulations. And those of us who conceived of Brexit as an opportunity for the United Kingdom to become an independent, nimble, outwardly facing trading nation are not going to be satisfied until we can get rid of those apron strings and really free the country up.
And you see then it's been wasted, a missed opportunity. I mean, can you see any of the benefits of Brexit as yet?
Oh, yeah, we've definitely seen some benefits. You know, let's not forget the vaccine rollout, which would have been hindered by the European Medical Agency. That was terrific. And let's not forget the terrific efforts the Prime Minister's made very successfully championing Ukraine, which again would have been very difficult as members of the EU because we would have had that, we would have been held back by Germany's conflict of interest, you know, importing loads of Russian oil. You know, I mean, definitely, but it's a process, Brexit. You know, I thought it was binary. When I woke up on the 23rd of June 2016, I was punching the air thinking, right, we're out. You know, and I think that's what most people thought. You know, we voted to get out, we'll be out. But it's been 6 years. It's longer than World War II. You know, we're still fighting to, you know, get that victory.
What do you still need to fight? What do you still need to change? What do you think Brexiteers are disillusioned, or are Remainers becoming more akin to enjoying whatever it is we have now or don't have now?
Well, the Brexit deal is a bad deal. You know, that oven-ready deal on which the Prime Minister sort of was elected and got his 80-seat majority is a bad deal for the United Kingdom. And I said at the time, in some ways, it's worse than remaining because of Northern Ireland and so on. But what we really need, and we're seeing it with the rail strikes, you know, we're seeing it with the cost of living crisis, what we really need is a government that believes in small state, a deregulated industry and business, and cutting taxes and putting money in the back pockets of people so that they can make the decisions that they want to make with their money. But what we've got, actually what we've had for 12 years, is a tax, borrow and spend Conservative government, a large state institution. And that's not something that wishes inherently and naturally to be a deregulating, nimble, independent trading nation.
How much of that is due, or how much can you give the government the excuse of the Ukraine war or the pandemic, most of all?
Not a lot. Not a lot. You know, you look at GDP back in 2010, it was just over £2 trillion a year. GDP now is 2.2 trillion. It's hardly moved. In the meantime, the US GDP has gone up from $15 trillion to $23 trillion, 50%. Massive difference. The UK is not performing. You know, one of the reasons we've got strikes is because we've had 12 years of costs going up for people, but without a commensurate increase in GDP and wages. You know, we've had very sluggish wage growth. And we're going to see, you know, mother of all sort of economic problems with the rapid inflation we're now seeing being set in with these wage rises.
Ben Habib, we haven't even touched on immigration, which for a huge number of Brexiteers was a reason for voting for it, wanting to get control of the borders, and yet we've got more illegal crossings in the Channel than ever before. In that sense, how would you evaluate the Brexit that we have been given? Would you call it a failure in that respect?
Yeah, well, we haven't taken control of our borders, have we? And we have this very visual image of people crossing the Channel illegally, getting to the UK, which the Prime Minister really should have sat on that. And it's utterly ridiculous because Border Force, who should be repelling these illegal crossings at the point that they enter our territorial waters, are actually giving them free taxi service to our coast at the taxpayers' expense. And, you know, I heard you talking about Rwanda earlier. Let's not mistake ourselves. Rwanda is not border control policy. Rwanda is the deportation of people who've successfully made it across the Channel. So that is not the reinforcement of border control. That's not taking back control of our borders. That's trying to deal with the problem once it's in situ in the United Kingdom, which is a much, much taller order than actually repelling people at the point of entry. What we need is a policy that prevents crossing into British territorial waters, and that seems to elude the government.
Well, Ben, a lot of people think we crossed the border and we're at the point of entry of Brexit. You would think, certainly that wasn't the finish line. That was only the start line as far as you're concerned. There's a lot to do, and it's people like you that is going to hold the government to account as to what should be done.
Yeah, I mean, I feel quite shouty because I've been doing it for a long time. And I feel like a naysayer, and I wish I could just get behind the government and bang the drum and say, what a great Prime Minister, he delivered Brexit and all the rest of it. But that is misleading the nation. We haven't got what we voted for. We didn't vote for part of the United Kingdom to leave. We didn't vote to be hitched at the hip with the European Union sort of regulatory cobweb of nightmare. You know, we voted to leave the EU, to take back control of, in the Prime Minister's words, for the country to leave the EU as one United Kingdom, to take back control of our laws, our borders, our cash and our fish. And in everything I've just listed, we do not have control.
OK, well, I was going to say happy birthday. Maybe not. They'll put the drinks on ice for that as well. Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, and he's still negotiating and harassing and lobbying as regards Brexit and getting it done because he doesn't think it has been done.
Stay with us. We're going to talk about state pensions. They're expected to rise by 10% to keep up with inflation as part of the Chancellor's triple lock plans. We'll be finding out what that means for you after your forecast.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Plenty more very warm, hazy sunshine for many of us today, but we are going to start to see more and more thunderstorms breaking out, and there is a Met Office warning in place. Weather fronts close to the far north of Scotland, but actually through today, pushing away. It's this one spreading up from the south that's bringing the risk of thunderstorms, and some big downpours are likely in places by this afternoon. Many of us starting with plenty of blue sky and sunshine, but clouding over across the southeast, sunshine turning increasingly hazy, and as the temperatures build, so we are more likely to see thunderstorms breaking out. Very hit and miss, not everywhere seeing them, far from it, but there is the potential for thunderstorms, certainly across the Midlands, East Wales, southern parts of England during this afternoon. Hit and miss affairs, but where they do occur, they could cause some disruption. The highest temperatures likely over northern England, northern parts of the Midlands, where we could get up to 30 Celsius this afternoon. But as I said, that heat and humidity may well trigger further thundery showers during the afternoon and the evening, spreading further northwards. And we continue to have the risk of thundery showers coming up from France across the south. Overnight tonight. It will be another pretty warm night as well. Towns and cities staying in the mid-teens generally, so not a particularly comfortable night. It won't be as hot, certainly across northern England, the Midlands on Friday. Generally a bit more cloud around and a continued likelihood of heavy thundery showers drifting up. Still plenty of fine sunny weather, certainly across southern eastern parts of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, though, thicker cloud moving in with some outbreaks of rain, and that is a weather front which will start to switch things up for all of us come the weekend. As I say, still fairly warm in the sunshine, 24, 25 across the east, but not as hot as today. And that cold front, that band of rain in the west, spreads much cooler air across all parts of the UK. And then this low pressure system will dominate, bringing plenty of showers, certainly in the west, through the weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Creeping up to 6:30 on this Thursday morning. Very good to have you on board. This is Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Still to come on this morning's programme, we're helping you stay safe from the scammers. If you've ever had your bank card swallowed by the ATM machine, that's happened to me before actually, you won't want to miss the advice. That's coming up from a finance expert a little bit later in the programme who actually, she fell victim to the fraud herself. So she's got all the tips on how to avoid it. That's at 6:45.
They're very cunning.
They are.
They are. They think of ways if they don't get you through swallowing.
Outbox the foxes.
Yeah, they get you phoning and whatever. Oh,
can't even trust calls from your bank anymore, I was being told this morning.
Yes, or your doctor's appointments, NHS.
If you haven't had a text or an email to say they're going to call you, then it's probably a scam.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. Also this morning, we've got an interesting guy coming into the studio, and he's going to be coming about 7:45 this morning. He's the kit man. The kit man is the guy who washes the kit, lays out the kits for the football team, in his case Tottenham Hotspur. But what he's doing is he's got access to a lot of kits and a lot of visiting players as well. He is auctioning off these shirts signed by the players for a very, very good cause. Okay, so we'll have a display of those shirts at 7:45. This is my wife's worst nightmare. Our house is full of shirts. Do you know I have, amongst the shirts I have, I have Roy Keane's shirt from when Man United played Southampton. Remember when the grey shirts and Fergie made them change them at half-time? Remember that?
Not really, no.
Do you remember Eric Cantona's return of the Magnificent Seven shirt?
Not really, no. But all I do know is when Ruthie showed me into your spare room the other day to get changed before Ascot, I thought there were two men standing in the room and I jumped out of my skin, and then I realised you had full life-size mannequins dressed in football kits, which was quite bizarre.
Look, it may sound odd to you the way she's just described it, but it's not as odd as it seems. You can join in any of our discussions. What do you collect? Do you collect football shirts? There's so many wrong ones out there. Would you not like some football shirts? I could sell you some.
No, thanks.
A lot of them aren't genuine, a lot of them aren't real, so be careful about that. gbnews@gbnews.uk. Maybe send us a picture of your football shirt or whatever other shirts that you have. Yeah, or tweet at GB News.
Now, pensioners are expected to receive a double-digit rise in their state pensions next year after the Treasury has vowed to return to the triple lock system.
Good. That's what I think. A lot of people, I've never heard so much moaning about this yesterday, people who perhaps their only income is the state pension. A lot of people saying, is this the right move because of inflation? If pensioners get it, should everybody get it? Well, let's go to Helen Morrissey. She is an expert on all of this. Pensions analyst Hargreaves Lansdowne. Helen, the only point I'm trying to make there is, for people, and I would say it's the vast majority of pensioners who have worked their whole lives, who've paid into the system, but have got absolutely nothing else but getting this weekly cheque for, and it can range from, what, about 150 quid to 180 quid, depending.
Yeah. And you know, as you say, you know, there's a lot of people who are wholly dependent on the state pension. They don't have any other pensions. They might not have families who can look after them. And so, you know, we need these state pensions to be going up at a decent amount every year to take account of things like inflation. I think what has also come out of this is that when we look at inflation and what's fueling it, it's the essentials, it's your fuel, it's your energy, it's your food, and proportionally, pensioners spend more of their income on those things that are rising.
Yes, to keep warm and to eat and whatever. I mean, it's not as if they're spending it going to Glastonbury or anything, although there is one case with that today.
I think, look, from the Treasury's perspective, they've made this commitment, so you know it's being broadly welcomed. But you have to make these decisions in the cold light of day dispassionately. You can't get emotional about it, can you? And you have to say, is an inflation-stoking rise for pensioners fair when you're saying we need pay restraint everywhere else? For example, in the public sector, where you've got nurses on hardly anything as well, struggling to pay the bills, the working-age people having to expect, you know, a real-life wage cut.
I think when we talk about this inflationary increase that we're expecting, it's not just pensioners that are going to be getting this. All benefits claimants are going to be getting it. And I think it is in recognition of so many people being wholly reliant on that amount. What I'd also like to say is last year pensioners were in line for quite a big increase of over 8%.
Didn't get it.
And they didn't get it because they suspended
And the other thing, Helen, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you're a public sector worker, if you're a civil servant, your pension is triple locked as well. As your pension goes up with inflation as well.
Your pension is not triple locked, but it does go up with inflation, up to a certain amount. Yeah,
it's capped at something. So it's probably not going to go up to 20%.
No. They tend to cap it around 5%, which, you know, more often than not is more than enough.
Right, so the cynic in me then is thinking, well, why have they done this? Because they like the silver vote?
I mean, I'm sure that they do like the silver vote, absolutely. But I do think, as you say, we did see pensioners missing out on this bigger increase last year. And, you know, we've got to remember that pensioner poverty is still a really, really big issue. And the triple lock was brought in to alleviate that.
Could I just stop you there? I know we all sit here and we all triple lock this and triple lock that. And if anybody's watching and they're thinking, what are we talking about here? Could you explain what triple lock is?
Yeah, so the triple lock was brought in 2010 to alleviate pensioner poverty, where people were getting tiny increases every year of maybe, you know, less than £1 a week. So basically, your state pension should rise by whatever is the biggest of 2.5%, CPI inflation or wages.
Right, OK. I mean, we saw the inflation rate yesterday at 9.1, but I think the really scary thing were the various subsectors of that. I mean, production costs and whatever, which were over
PPI,
20%. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So, you know, to say that things aren't going to get worse down the line would be in complete denial. I do also think, in defence of pensioners, a lot of people have a chance to earn extra money or work extra days. I mean, that mightn't be fair, but you have the chance to do that. A lot of people are just locked into a fixed income, and it ain't going to grow. they're stuck on that.
Exactly. And as you say, a lot of people, by the time they hit state pension age, it's not that they don't want to work, they're not actually physically able to, so their options are limited.
When is state pension age? How old?
So it's on the increase at the moment. So it's currently 66. It's soon going to be going up to 67, and there's a consultation as to how to rise it.
I've got 4 more years of being stuck here.
Before you can get your 185 a week.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh.
It'll be about breaking even then. But in all seriousness, this argument that pensioners haven't got any other way to make an income, it doesn't sit well with me, because I think of all these teachers. When are they supposed to get extra income on top of their public sector pay when they're not getting any?
They do tuition.
No, but seriously.
They have the opportunity. I'm being serious. They have the opportunity to moonlight. Isn't that the term?
Honestly, I just don't know if I accept that. I think all the hard-working teachers that I see that are worked all the way through the
and I've seen
pandemic,
them
and they
too.
do long school days. They're working in the holidays, doing all the marking, and then they're expected to get a second job as well.
Correct. That's
I
life.
just think.
Welcome to the real world. I mean, that's what people do. But what I'm saying is, at least you have the option, whereas a lot of people don't have the option.
People would argue they've got that option.
Of course, you have the option. And I've gone through my whole life thinking I've got a choice to earn this, or I can work 20 hours a day and earn that. I mean, maybe it's just me, but...
So maybe our teachers now need to go and get jobs in pubs and things in the evening.
I always remember my father, he said, don't work for anybody, work for yourself. And he'd worked for a company, a carpet fitting company for, until he was mid-30s or so. And then he went, what was called, Helen, on his own. And I always thought, so although his days got longer and whatever, it just meant that you were more in control of your own life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, that whole thing about that move to self-employment,
yeah.
You've got to sort out your own pension when you're self-employed. You're not going to get one.
Which he never did, incidentally, I have to say.
And it's a big issue for the self-employed, that they are very, very under-pensioned. So state pension is particularly important.
Look, so if we were to sum up, where do you see the whole situation? I mean, and people do talk about this is unfair in the young, or as Isabel was saying, it's unfair with people who are in state jobs, or I don't know how you would describe it.
An extra job at the weekend.
What would you say generally about what we're looking at?
I would say that we do have to remember that pensioners are a particularly vulnerable group. As we've said, there's far too many of them that are wholly reliant on this £185 a week. But a lot of them are getting a lot less than that. And, if we're looking at inflation, it's these fuel prices, the energy prices of heating your homes. You've got to try and safeguard those.
OK, Helen, lovely talking to you as always. Helen Morrissey is a pension analyst. I just wish I had met her earlier in my life, I have to say. Hargreaves, Lansdowne. And, of course, there is a situation with private pensions as well. Because of all the things going on in the world and inflation, they could be worth less.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've had some tricky times with the investment markets and things like that. And so, people's pension values, they might be seeing them taking a dip. But just remember, pensions are a long-term game. Don't make any knee-jerk reactions. Investment markets go down, but they do rise.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you very much indeed. So I'm all for pensioners getting double-digit rises in the state pension. You'd rather see people die in the cold over a bowl of broth.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying why make the distinction.
I'm just making it more colourful. I'm just really sort of translating what you mean. You would look and some old person would be found frozen over their bowl of soup because you don't think
perhaps we should just give higher pay to everybody. Or, I don't know. Anyway, it's a very difficult quandary.
If I was running the country... Yeah.
I think if I was running the country, we should just give people higher base rates for their pension. Anyway, well, I can't fix it. I'm not the Treasury. I'm not going to solve this problem.
OK,
what do
you think? Yeah, we just want to know what you think. We want to get you involved in this. Are you a pensioner? Are you worried about what you're getting? Do you think you deserve double-digit rises? Or are you young and disaffected by all of this? At GB News for the young people who can tweet, and for everybody else, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or perhaps you might want to write us a letter. We'll be back with the papers right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
In here waiting all morning, we say, bring us the papers. Who's going to deliver them this morning? Well, it's the political editor of The Sun on Sunday. That is Mr. David Wooding and
the broadcaster Liz Kershaw, which is always joyful. Liz, you've chosen the Mail front page this morning. Actually, I have to say it's at some little corner of most of the front pages this morning. Yeah. And this is the shocking news yesterday that polio is back in the UK after 40 years.
Yeah, it's one of those diseases like smallpox. There were, huge cheer across Europe and America and similarly developed countries that had been finally and fully eradicated. There was such a blight on health. I remember polio when I was a girl. People still I've met people who caught it as a child and are just a bit older than me and were, impaired by it for the rest of their lives.
Liz, I was going to say exactly the same.
Yeah.
I remember at school, you and I being similar age.
Yeah.
And people who had to wear braces and one leg was longer, they couldn't walk or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Calipers, they were called, were they, on the legs, like an iron
calipers,
case on the leg, yeah.
And
with a stirrup on the bottom.
Used to say, what's wrong or what happened? People say, he got polio.
Yeah.
Did Roosevelt have polio?
Who?
Roosevelt in the States, or is that...
Yes, he did. He was wheelchair.
But no one ever saw it.
No one.
It was a famous case, wasn't it?
Nobody was allowed to know, But famous people like Ian Jury, the blockheads.
True.
Dragged his leg and had one arm that wasn't as developed.
I have a feeling David Cameron's father as well. I have a feeling.
So what we're saying is, although people talk about what is this, they speak about, it was the effects of it were very, very visible.
And also, I remember iron lungs. Terrifying, because you could be absolutely paralysed by polio and you unable to breathe, and the solution was what it is.
But the solution here is we're looking for vaccinations. I mean, it's not that they think this is going to spread or anything, and I'm not exactly sure. They think it's somebody from outside the country who's come into the country with this.
People have been vaccinated against polio since just after the war in this country. And do you remember, I remember going to the Penn Street Clinic in Rochdale and being given these ghastly yellow sugar lumps.
Oh, yes. I remember the yellow sugar
I don't know how it's administered now to your children.
They didn't get a sugar lump, but I remember having a sugar
lump.
Yeah,
and so the population, if you were born here, you would have been offered and probably taken up polio vaccination. They think that this is people moving into the country that didn't get vaccinated as children. They haven't had any actual cases present yet, have they? They found it in faecal matter in the sewerage that's been examined because they monitor that. They monitor that for COVID because you shed it when you go to the toilet. So it's just a red flag. So they're saying, check your red book, which is that plastic book you're given as a mum with your vaccination records in it. Check if you've had it. You should have had it if you were born here, but
make sure you're vaccinated.
Frightening.
It's frightening, yeah.
David, there's a lot of things we can't talk about politically today because the by-elections are taking place in Honiton and Tiverton and in Wakefield as well. But we're going to touch upon, this is in the Times, and we're talking about public sector wage rises. What is the Treasury saying about this?
Well, the Treasury is saying that there's going to be no money available for public sector pay. Extra money, that is.
Well, that'll be like a red rag to a bull, won't it?
Exactly. So the departments, let's say the Department for Education, for teachers, Department for transport workers, and so forth, Department for Health, of course, will get no extra money. So they'll have to find extra money to pay for pay rises out of existing budgets. And if they pay more money, they'll have to make cuts or alter their cloth accordingly. So this is, as you rightly say, Eamonn, this is a big problem ahead because everybody's feeling the pinch. 11% inflation.
But what that signal says is your wage rise, if you get one, is going to be about 3%.
Yeah. And, of course, this week, later on this week, in the next couple of days, probably tomorrow, I think, we're going to get the NHS pay review body reporting back. Whatever they suggest, I doubt whether it'll be near 11%. That then raises the prospect, well, if the rail workers are going to get some more money, we want some more money too. Everybody's in the same boat. But, of course, throwing money at inflation is not the answer. We all know that. It's easy to say it because we all want money to keep in line with inflation. But the more money we pay in wages, the more inflation spirals.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Bailey was famously, sort of lambasted for saying that. But it's a fact, isn't it?
It's an economic fact.
You increase wages, you stoke inflation. What's Keir Starmer saying about it all, Liz? Because in the Times they're talking about how he's now facing a fresh clash with the trade unions as well.
Yeah, well, he's in a delicate position, isn't he? Because if his job is to support the trade unions, the trades and labour movement set up in the early part of the 20th century was to support the workers of the country, the people who didn't have money, couldn't live off their capital, who had to go out and earn a wage, the labour force. That's what the Labour Party's for. So does he support strikes for better paying conditions, or does he stand up to that and then actually encourage the wrath of these huge unions, still strong in the public sector, not so much private? We were just asking, are you still in the NUJ? Neither of us are anymore. But if you're in the public sector, you're very likely to be in unions. So he's got a battle on his hands. So what he's saying now is, we're not going to pronounce, the Labour Party is not going to pronounce on this. Actually, he didn't say it. He's got a spokesman for Keir Starmer says, because he's been avoiding interviews, that he's now going to wait till the peer-reviewed bodies, apparently there are 7 of them, reports with their recommendations, and then he's going to support whatever they say. So it's a real compromise. It'll look weak to some people. It'll curry favour with others. He's walking a tightrope politically on this. And then in his own party, he's giving diktats to his front benchers and backbenchers, and they've openly defied him, haven't they, by joining the picket lines.
And he's disappeared without talking about it.
He's got a spokesman now.
Yeah, yeah. So
next Thursday, me and David are sending spokesmen.
Broadly speaking, I'm in favour of trade unions.
Yeah.
But I tell you, I've worked in America and in television, absolutely ridiculous. You could not believe it. You could not believe what happens. For instance, now there would be a director and there would be a producer who I can hear what they're doing and they're talking to my ear. In America, they can only talk to a floor manager who then can talk to me. So if anything's going wrong, I won't know about it unless I'm spoken to by a particular person that would do that. And you could not lift anything. I mean, if you go to lift that mug, that's not your job. It's somebody else's job to do that. Television was so heavily unionised. And then I remember what television was like here in the 80s, very, very high-paid industry. And television has gone, by that I mean technicians particularly. Yeah. And it's gone from a really high-wage economy in the 80s to quite a low-wage economy. Anybody thinks you're going to get into TV and you're going to earn a fortune? No, you might earn money because you can work 20 hours a day, which is a different thing. But so it is interesting. Where do you stand on the whole union situation? Let us know.
David, let's turn our attention now to the front of the pension. And this is Rishi Sunak defending the triple lock. We've just been talking about it actually in the programme, and he's saying it's only fair. It's not just to pensions, we should point out, it's to benefits as well. And this is inflation busting at 10% roughly.
Yeah.
We're keeping in line with
CPI.
CPI.
Of course, inflation busting means a real terms increase. And if it doesn't bust inflation, then people feel that their wages are being crunched down. So it depends which way you want to say it. But what Rishi Sunak's saying, he's going to reinstate the triple lock, which was a promise at the last election. And remember, it was dropped because it was felt that when there was no inflation, a 2.5% rise, the triple lock is either 2.5% in line with pay growth or in line with inflation, whichever is highest. Of course, now inflation raging at 11%, it's going to add an extra £18.50 to the pensions, the state pension, which is about £1,000 a year. Now that, in one way, pits the pensioners against the working people who will say, well, if they can get it, why can't we have it?
Yeah.
What Rishi Sunak is saying, well, look, pensioners are among the most vulnerable people. They spend more time at home.
They vote Conservative.
Exactly, Liz, exactly. It's only fair that we keep our Conservative voters.
They all vote.
Do you know, I honestly, I'm sitting listening to this, and any of us, no matter if you're in work, out of work, whether you're on a fixed pension, whatever it happens to be, have any of you, because I have, thought about what you're not going to spend to keep pace with the 10% inflation?
Well, I think about going out now because where I live in a village, anything's 5 miles away.
Yeah.
So I consciously combine trips. Whereas I'd jump in the car and pop out once, twice a day, now I think, no, I'll go on Thursday and I'll go to Sainsbury's and I'll go so-and-so and I'll go to the bank and I'll just make one round trip because, if I do a trip into the nearest big town, which is Milton Keynes and back, that's almost a gallon of petrol.
Yes.
And we're not even thinking, when I worked out today what a gallon of petrol costs. So we trot out, don't we, metric. I paid £1.89 for petrol yesterday, which cost me £118 to fill my tank. When I got home, I thought, hang on, £1.89 times 4.5, it's £8.55 or something. For a gallon. Can you imagine it? So, yes, you think... I remember working in a petrol station when I was in sixth form on a Saturday, and petrol was 53p a gallon.
Gosh.
And it's now £8.50.
I can remember when it was 25p for a pint of beer.
Yeah, at the same time, I went to my grandma's pub and it was 23p for a pint of mild.
I mean, it's not like 7 quid or something now.
I think we're talking about 1975.
There's another case in point, of course, because we're all putting a squeeze on what we spend.
Yeah.
We're not going to go to the pub as often.
No.
We're not going to spend as much at the pub when we go. That's going to affect the pub trade and jobs in there and the cost of living for them and everything else we spend money on.
But I think in one fell swoop, I look at it and I say, in one fell swoop, if we don't take a holiday this year, that saves me my 10%.
Holiday is a big thing.
Yes.
I think if you spent I thought yesterday, what have I spent this last month? And I've bought food, obviously, and I've bought petrol, and I've paid my bills, but I haven't bought any clothes. I haven't been shopping.
Yes.
Browsing.
I think people cut back on the cinema, on eating out, on just things that are luxuries and whatever. Let us know what you're cutting back on, if in fact you are. But we're just saying that it's that realisation, this inflation is not going to go away. What are you going to do about it? Now, we're going to talk more money matters now. The guys will be back in 40 minutes' time.
Thank you very much.
And this is about scamming.
Yes, police are warning ATM users across the country to be vigilant of a scam in which bank cards are swallowed up by machines for fraudsters to then duplicate.
So in Hertfordshire, a number of victims have reported their cards were kept by the ATMs with cash then withdrawn from their accounts within minutes of all of this.
Well, joining us for more on this is finance expert Laura Retty. And Laura, in spite of being an expert in all these matters, you too have been a victim of one of these highly sophisticated scams. Start by telling us about your experience.
Yeah, so my scam experience was a bit different to an ATM scam. It was actually literally a couple of weeks ago, I got called by somebody who sounded incredibly convincing, and I was very, very nearly completely convinced, which I was a couple of years ago, saying that my card had been used somewhere in Aberdeen. And I actually live in Gloucestershire, so I thought, well, this is very, very odd. And it turned out that in fact, it wasn't somebody from my fraud prevention team at my bank, and it was a scammer. What was really scary about it was they had all the terminology down. They'd clearly worked in finance before, and they'd been customer service trained because it sounded so legitimate. At one point, he asked me to open an app on my phone to verify something. At that point, I said, I'm going to call HSBC directly. I immediately hung up, and they didn't have any record of my card being used in Aberdeen, and neither had they called me. So I managed to catch it right at the last minute. But unfortunately, 2 years ago, I wasn't quite so savvy. Very similar circumstances where somebody had said they'd used my card. So they were trying to tell me that I was a victim of fraud. And of course, your alarm bells would go off. You start to panic, and you tend to just go, okay, yeah, I'm going to do what you say to try and stop these people, and you don't realise you're actually talking to the scammers themselves.
Laura, I think a lot of this is up to your own guile about this, because the courts don't seem to care about it. In my own circumstances, I was scammed by a guy in Belfast for a significant amount of money, but because the bank reimbursed me, the judge didn't put him in prison or didn't give him any sort of sentence because he said it was a victimless crime. Well, I can honestly tell you, I spent months thinking, who did I give this number to? Who had details of my bank? Who would have done this on me? And I just wonder what your view is about the penalties for these people if they're caught.
Yeah, unfortunately, that does feel a little bit like there isn't enough being done to catch these people. And partly the problem is because there is just so much of it happening all of the time. Millions of scams are happening globally every minute of the day, whether it's they're capturing your details on a fake website, whether it's they've sent you a text or an email and you've inadvertently clicked on a link, whether it's like an ATM scam, which is the most recent one that's been happening. The problem is because it's so hugely such a problem, a lot of banks aren't even going to a huge amount of detail to try and catch the particular people. So in your case, for example, they just don't have the time. There isn't the infrastructure to. So it's a case of banks just insuring themselves massively so they can reimburse people. But it is scary that it feels like a lot of these cyber criminals are just getting away with it.
Well, just one final point on this, Laura. We just saw the front of an ATM machine. If we could just run those pictures again and see this where you put your PIN in, whatever. Is there anything that you would say be aware of as you approach an ATM machine, for instance? Should it have a camera? What to spot?
Yeah, so on this particular incident, they've used what's called a skimmer attachment. So that's where you put your card in and they've probably spray painted a piece of machinery and stuck it on it so that they can record your details. So look for things that might be a little bit wibbly or wobbly. As you're putting your PIN in, if it feels a bit squidgy, if there's anything that looks a little bit like a brand new part of a machine, it's probably best to walk away. Also, just have a quick look to make sure there isn't a little camera been attached, perhaps at the above. And the other thing is suspicious bystanders. If there are people sort of loitering fairly close to a cash point, just walk away. And if you do think you've been scammed, then just either freeze your card on your phone through your app or immediately call the bank as you're stood there.
Oh,
Okay.
Sharks circling everywhere, aren't there? They really
Circling
are.
everywhere. You're right. Laura, thanks. Yeah. We should talk again soon, Laura, because these things are always updated and they always expand and there's new advice and new scams. Thanks, Laura. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we're talking about Boris Johnson and Prince Charles. They're meeting in Rwanda after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister will meet Prince Charles in Rwanda today as they attend a summit of Commonwealth leaders.
Very good to see you. The time is just after 7 o'clock, Thursday, 23rd of June. Breakfast on GB News, on the telly, on the radio, with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister and the Prince of Wales will hold talks in Rwanda today for the first time since the Prince privately criticised the government's migrant policy. It'll take place during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, where the PM is expected to focus on the economic benefits of the organisation.
Talks to avert the second national rail strike broke down again last night, so it is underway today. Millions of you facing another day of travel chaos. It comes as the government prepares to lay out legislation that would allow agency workers to cover striking staff.
The Chancellor has defended restoring the so-called pensions triple lock, which could see state pensions rise by 10%. It comes after yesterday's announcement that inflation has risen to 9.1%.
Now, on that point, I would like to say, my dear friend and caring friend, Isabel, beside me here, we were talking about, I was in defence of the triple lock and pensions getting double-digit rise, and Isabel simply pointed out, was it fair that people who were in teaching jobs or nursing jobs or whatever may have had to take on second jobs? Anyway, we got into what was a, well, I thought an amusing analogy where I was saying, so you would, you know, I don't know what I was saying.
You were just saying I was cold-hearted and mean to pensioners.
That's what I was saying.
And all I was doing was trying to stick up for nurses and teachers, and now the inbox is all hating on me.
Some people miss the irony between things, but Isabel is very big-hearted and she wouldn't leave anybody to starve.
That's nice of you to say.
But it's very true. You wouldn't leave anybody to starve to death.
Of course not.
Would you?
That wasn't what I was saying. It wasn't
I know
what
it wasn't.
You were implying, but that wasn't what I was saying.
It wasn't what she was saying. And she's not as stuck up as a lot of you think she is. I just want to point that out. I do want to point it out. I hope I've righted the wrong
Thank you.
with all of that.
Corrected it on air.
Wise yourselves up and get off her back. Wind your neck in with all of those things. GB Views at GB News. I do want to say, while we're on the situation here, Gary Lineker, Gaza, the superb football anchor, and one of our guests, Martin Dobney, earlier this week on the newspaper review, suggested that Gary had been driving around in a 6-litre Mercedes and therefore should not be lecturing people about climate change, right? Well, Gary himself says he only has one car now, and it is an electric Mini. So we are very happy, Gary, to put that record straight for you on that one. Top story.
Top story. The Prime Minister is today to hold talks with Prince Charles in Rwanda during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
Are they going to hold talks? Are they just
I
going to
think they're having a nice
tea?
cup of tea, as it's been briefed from
And what do you think Boris will say to him? Oh, you, mate, what are you saying about my Rwanda
they'll probably
policy?
skirt around the issue, if I can imagine it.
It'll be the elephant in the room.
It'll be the elephant.
That they'll not mention, because Charles criticised the Rwanda policy because this is the first time they have met following Prince of Wales's comments, and these were private comments, and he says the government's Rwanda migrant plan was appalling.
Well, the PM is expected to use the summit in Kigali to promote the economic benefits of the Commonwealth. Let's speak now to journalist and author Michaela Wrong, an expert in the country, written extensively on Rwanda, indeed award-winning writing when it comes to all of that. And just give us your perspective on firstly, what you think this says about the Commonwealth, that it's being held in a country that you describe as a brutal and repressive regime.
Yes, well, I wrote a piece in The Guardian today and expressed the view that it really sends out really worrying signals because, you know, post-Brexit, we know that Britain is relying on the Commonwealth signing all sorts of trade deals with Commonwealth members because it wants to look to the Commonwealth to spread its influence across the globe. But by staging this summit in Kigali, all the values we are told that the Commonwealth represents, which are sort of freedom of speech and respect for the individual, respect for the rule of law, respect for civil society, really they're violated by staging those in this meeting in Kigali because Rwanda doesn't respect any of those things. It's an extremely repressive state. It has a terrible track record on human rights, both at home and also abroad, because it's actually government there has sent people outside Rwanda's borders to hit, you know, attempt to assassinate, sort of intimidate and silence critics abroad. So,
Michaela, it is scary listening to you and what you have to say, because we would be led to believe two things. One, that it's all changed, everything's different. And secondly, it's only by including countries and states like Rwanda that you can change things.
Well, yes, and that was expressed because Rwanda is not a natural member of the Commonwealth. It's not a former British colony. It's a former Belgian colony, and it used to be a French-speaking country. So when it joined in 2009, people were saying, look, it doesn't really meet the human rights criteria, but, you know, by joining, it will reform. And I think most people would say that actually, since joining in 2009, things have got worse in Rwanda on the human rights front. So that hasn't worked. That calculation hasn't worked.
Why do you think that the tone coming from the British government has changed so abjectly just since last year, when British diplomats at a human rights conference in Geneva were speaking out against these abominations of human rights? I mean, you know, extrajudicial killings, torture, whatever it might be.
I think it's pure convenience. It's the British government, Priti Patel, was looking for a country that would do offshore asylum seeker processing. And they hadn't only approached Rwanda, they did approach Uganda, they approached Ghana, they approached Kenya, and a lot of those countries are saying, we can't handle this. We have refugee issues of our own, we have problems of space. Rwanda, bizarrely, stepped up to the plate. And I'm saying bizarrely because it's a very densely populated, very small country where there's real land hunger. So it's the sort of the least appropriate country that you could choose for this kind of deal.
Dear God, sorry, I'm just seeing here, this is an article you wrote in The Guardian yesterday. Last year, at a UN human rights conference in Geneva, this is last year, right? British officials robustly called out Rwanda on its record of extrajudicial killings, disappearances and torture. And once the asylum seekers deal was signed, the tone under the Johnson government then completely changed.
Yes, I mean, now Priti Patel refers to Rwanda as a place where refugees will prosper and thrive. And Boris Johnson says, oh, you know, it's one of the safest destinations in Africa, which is true for tourists. You know, how refugees who are fleeing repressive governments themselves and obviously don't want to live in police states, that's why they hit the road, how they're going to react to supposedly integrating in Rwanda is another question.
I mean, and the extent of the paranoia of this country, I mean, I'm reading your book at the moment, Do Not Disturb, and when you were writing that, You had to write it offline because you were afraid somebody might try and track your work. You had to hide your work at the end of every day in a laundry basket, wherever it might be, wherever you were writing at the time.
I became paranoid because everyone I was speaking to was so frightened of the government. And we know that Rwanda has been a customer of this Israeli company called NSO that sells Pegasus spyware. And it uses this spyware to eavesdrop on government officials in South Africa, Uganda, Congo, all its neighbouring countries. So, yeah, I became very, very paranoid myself when I was writing the book.
I'm just looking for the Telegraph here because there's this very powerful image of Prince Charles this morning, and we've been showing it a little bit earlier in front of all of these human skulls.
Yes.
And they will be confronted during this Commonwealth meeting, Chogm, as it's called, with some very tragic memories of what happened during the genocide in the 90s. What will they see, though, of the reality of Kigali? I mean, are they going to see the real Rwanda during this conference?
Well, everyone who goes to Rwanda on an official visit gets taken to the Genocide Memorial, and that's what Prince Charles was doing yesterday. And it is really shocking. There were 250,000 bodies there, victims of the 1994 genocide. Their bones have been collecting there. But the trouble is that this is used by the regime as sort of like, this is why we do what we do. This is why we're not necessarily a liberal democracy, because, you know, our Tutsi minority continue to be in danger. But this is used to justify all sorts of repressive practices, including the fact that anyone who's a member of an opposition party is not able to campaign for the opposition. And 16 opposition activists, for example, are in jail now at the moment, alongside a whole host of sort of citizens journalists. So that's the side that you're not going to see. The opposition isn't getting a look in. You know, the opposition leader, Victoire Ingabire, hasn't been involved in any of the Commonwealth events.
Now, Michaela Wrong, she is the author, as Isabel mentioned there, of that book, Do Not Disturb. It's the story of a political murder and an African regime gone bad. We appreciate you coming in once again, and your take and educating us on all of this. What I want to do now is to get the royal perspective and the embarrassment maybe that may happen when the Prime Minister meets the Prince of Wales on all of this. Royal commentator Jenny Bond with her take today. You see, Jenny, it's not as if, and you would know Charles well, it's not as if he doesn't believe what he said, and I'm sure he would happily stand up to say it straight to Boris Johnson's face, except he knows he can't. If you were a fly on the wall in that room when they have their cup of tea, what way do you think it'll go?
Well, I think you two were correct in your surmising that it's going to be the elephant in the room, probably, unless Boris Johnson decides to bring it up. I think that Prince Charles will not. I mean, we don't even know if he said the remarks that it was an appalling policy. It was said to be in private. I think he undoubtedly did. I don't think he will initiate a discussion on it, though. But, you know, there are sources close to Downing Street saying that Boris Johnson might. And if he does, then I think Charles will say what he thinks. I mean, what Michaela was saying is absolutely shocking, isn't it? I didn't know it was the facts were quite as grim as that. Now, Prince Charles probably does now he's there. And I think he might ask Mr. Johnson, why aren't you even going to go and visit the accommodation you're proposing for the asylum seekers? Apparently he hasn't got time to do so.
You see, the whole idea of royals having opinions, I think Charles is one of those people that he will have studied this. He's a thoughtful man. He will have thought this through. He's a caring man as well. I don't think he would be frightened to face off to Boris Johnson. However, we all know the protocol and we would all know the headlines it would make. And as you say, even the initial reported comment, you know, we don't know if that's true or not. It's not been denied, so it probably is. But he would know what he's talking about, and he would have enough knowledge to be able to engage in a debate or conversation with Boris Johnson on this, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think, actually, Charles will be able to help himself if Mr. Johnson decides to bring this up. I think Charles will engage in that conversation in private, but it will leak out, I'm sure. I don't think he's too unhappy that his purported view that is an appalling policy has leaked out. As you say, it hasn't been denied, so I think it's probably true. Charles is the sort of man who in the past refused to go to a state banquet because Chinese leaders were there. He is a principled man and he acts on his principles. So I think he would engage in conversation about it and more or less damn the consequences.
We spoke, Jenny, last week when the comments first leaked, and you said, why shouldn't he be able to voice his opinion? And you were supportive of that right to do so. Do you think, though, when he becomes king, he will continue to be so strident in his views, or do you think he might dial it down a bit?
I think he probably will dial it down a bit. So he himself said he's not so stupid as to not realise that he has to be a bit more discreet when he is king. But I said, and I repeat this week, that I think the monarchy could move with the times a little more. We don't have a written constitution as such. It's a sort of piecemeal constitution, and it can be changed. It's also an ancient constitution, and I think it should move with the times. And the given mantra is that the sovereign has the right to warn his prime minister, his or her prime minister, to be consulted and to advise. And I think if you are saying your policy, in my view, is appalling, that could be viewed as a warning. That could be within that constitution. Anyway, I don't think we should get so bound up about what the monarch can and cannot do. I think we all have a right to say our bit now, wherever, social media, wherever. And I think Prince Charles, even as king, should have the right to do so.
I totally agree with you. I love it because it annoys politicians so much that they get so frustrated and so annoyed about it. It's nothing to do about it. Jenny, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You always look immaculate. Everything about you is immaculate. But I'm even more impressed by your bookshelves and your study there.
Your globe.
Very cosy, isn't it? It looks really, really nice.
Very inviting.
It's my husband's. I haven't read a single book.
Well, it's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
OK, with the time
Do you ever do that? Do you ever do that? You have books and you don't read them?
Well, no, I'm guilty of getting books and reading half and then sort of
giving up.
Out. Yeah.
I've got Boris Johnson's biography on Churchill.
Oh yeah, not read it.
No, but it looks good on the shelf.
I've got all the political biographies. Get halfway through, and they just tend to dry out, don't they? Get the juicy bits in the beginning, but no.
Yeah, they are.
There you go.
Right, so the time is 16 minutes past 7 o'clock.
Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. We're talking about polio this morning because the UK Health Security Agency is urging people to make sure that their polio vaccines are up to date. That's after traces of the virus were detected in a routine sewage inspection in London. The disease, which was officially eradicated in the UK in 2003, was discovered at a treatment works which serves 4 million people in the north and east of the capital.
The Education Secretary says a teacher's strike would be unforgivable after the National Education Union said it will strongly encourage its members to walk out over pay and workload. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Nadeem Zahawi said it would be irresponsible as young people have suffered more disruption than any generation due to the pandemic.
The media mogul Rupert Murdoch and the actress Jerry Hall are reportedly getting a divorce. That's according to the New York Times. The couple got married in March 2016 in central London. It is the fourth divorce for the 91-year-old.
What's happening with the rail strikes today? Day 2 of this national strike, and talks we hear broke down last night. The RMT union accusing the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, of wrecking negotiations, the government not directly taking part in these negotiations, but the union's thinking that the government are pulling strings from outside all of this.
Well, let's speak to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins. He's at London Waterloo Station this morning. Very good morning. Good to see you, Paul. Look, we should point out it's not the tubes today, it's the trains this Thursday.
Yeah, that's right, Isabel. Yeah, in London, it's only the overground trains that are affected, not the tube. So we do expect more people to try and pile onto the tube network on the fringes of London to get into the capital because they can't take the overground train. We expect buses to be a little bit busier, and obviously people trying to get around by bike or on foot, which should be interesting later as there is a forecast for a thunderstorm to hit the capital. So trying to get around, in fact, it's going to hit the south of England, so trying to get about anywhere on foot later is going to be pretty difficult, and that, one would have thought, should affect how people feel about the strike. Those talks breaking down last night because the RMT accusing the government, accusing Grant Shapps of wrecking the talks. He says that in the background, the government would not let Network Rail withdraw the redundancies threat. So they're accusing the government of wrecking the talks. The government are saying, no, you're lying, never did anything like that. Effectively, the two are calling each other liars and both saying the other side started it. So both sides are at loggerheads. Doesn't seem to be any movement in the talks at the moment. This is day 2 of strikes. Of course, it will feel like day 3. Yesterday, 60% of the rail network across the UK was running. Today, it's 20%. It'll be back to 60% tomorrow. Then on Saturday, we've got day 3 of the strike. And then the RMT say that they will ballot their members on further dates in the future. The government, by the way, has also announced plans to introduce legislation to use agency workers to cover the gaps when there are strikes. Now, the unions are saying, first of all, they have a right to strike, and that infringes that right. They're also saying that it could be unsafe for passengers. Network Rail, though, have welcomed this legislation. They've said that while key safety critical roles require many months of training, there are many other roles where they could be used, such as in security operations, which would make a real difference. So the government looking to try and change the laws that date back to the 1970s, to try and reduce the impact of future strikes. That could be in place as soon as mid-July. If we're looking for any sort of signs of optimism that when unions talk to the government, when they talk to the rail franchises, that there are breakthroughs, one glimmer of hope. Yesterday, Merseyrail, they are a privately run franchise up in Liverpool. They successfully negotiated a new deal with the unions up there, the Transport Salaried Staffs Association, for a 7.1% pay increase. So there is, some pressure then on both sides in this dispute to come to a resolution, given that can happen.
Paul, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. From Paul Hawkins, we go to our reporter Rachel Sweeney. Rachel's been looking into how these strikes are disrupting people's lives generally. She's in Newcastle this morning. Good morning, Rachel. Tell us more.
Hello, good morning. Yes, I'm with new man Mia, who is rubbing his eyes because he's so fed up of organising his journey into work today. So usually he would be at Newcastle rail station, but we're on his doorstep because he's waiting for a lift that he's going to have to walk quite far to get. Now, let's have a talk about where you would normally be at this stage and what you're going to have to do.
Around this time in the morning, I would usually be... Sorry, just waiting for the car to go by. Usually this morning on my journey, at this time in the morning, I would be at Central Station waiting for a train to Hexham to go to work. But this morning, I've asked the practice manager, I've kindly asked the practice manager if they wouldn't mind taking me to work. And it has been a bit of a slight organisational nightmare because they've had to arrange childcare for themselves. They're coming in from a bit of a ways away and they're having to take a bit of a detour to pick me up, but that is something I very much so appreciate of them.
Now, it's been a bit of a faff, hasn't it? But do you support the strikes, is the question?
Yes, I do. I can see why the railway workers are doing it. They simply want a slight pay rise. They want to be able to have a sustainable life. They're not looking for anything luxurious or glamorous. They want to be able to live sustainably, able to support themselves, support their families, and be able to essentially live properly without having to struggle, without any of them having to lose their jobs or anything like that. This is a small price to pay for what is essentially a massive greater good.
You're in a position where you have been able to find a way to get to work, but you work at a dentist practice in Hexham. What would happen if you couldn't get a lift and you couldn't get there?
There would be some there will be some issues with some of the compliance work that there will be some issues with some of the compliance work that I manage at the dental practice, and with the staff and the patients. It would cause some detrimental effects. However, if the railway workers had gotten their pay rise earlier on, as far as I'm aware, they actually tried to settle this matter on Monday before the strikes actually even commenced. This would not have been an issue.
And hopefully a lot of employers are much like yours, because I spoke to your boss yesterday who said that you can go home early so that you arrive home on time. That is the Geordie way, isn't it? Back to you.
OK, thank you very much. Thanks for that, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Stay with us. Coming up after the break, we've got all the latest sports stories. Paul Coyte will be here. But first, here's your Thursday forecast.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Plenty more very warm, hazy sunshine for many of us today, but we are going to start to see more and more thunderstorms breaking out, and there is a Met Office warning in place. Weather fronts close to the far north of Scotland, but actually through today pushing away. It's this one spreading up from the south that's bringing the risk of thunderstorms, and some big downpours are likely in places by this afternoon. Many of us starting with plenty of blue sky and sunshine, but clouding over across the southeast, sunshine turning increasingly hazy, and as the temperatures build, so we are more likely to see thunderstorms breaking out. Very hit and miss, not everywhere seeing them, far from it, but there is the potential for thunderstorms, certainly across the Midlands, East Wales, southern parts of England during this afternoon. Hit and miss affairs, but where they do occur, they could cause some disruption. The highest temperatures likely over northern England, northern parts of the Midlands, where we could get up to 30 Celsius this afternoon. But as I said, that heat and humidity may well trigger further thundery showers during the afternoon and the evening, spreading further northwards. And we continue to have the risk of thundery showers coming up from France across the south overnight tonight. It will be another pretty warm night as well. Towns and cities staying in the mid-teens generally, so not a particularly comfortable night. It won't be as hot, certainly across northern England, the Midlands on Friday. Generally a bit more cloud around and a continued likelihood of heavy thundery showers drifting up. Still plenty of fine sunny weather, certainly across southern eastern parts of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, though, thicker cloud moving in with some outbreaks of rain, and that is a weather front which will start to switch things up for all of us come the weekend. As I say, still fairly warm in the sunshine, 24, 25 across the east, but not as hot as today. And that cold front, that band of rain in the west, spreads much cooler air across all parts of the UK. And then this low pressure system will dominate, bringing plenty of showers, certainly in the west, through the weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 7:28. Still to come on our programme this morning. Could airport workers and airlines be the next in line to strike? And what could that mean for your summer holidays?
I wouldn't blame them.
20 past 8. You wouldn't blame them. But when it starts to
chaos, pressure,
holidays,
and then people giving off to them all the time. The people I really admire at airport, I admire everybody from loads to baggage, the security people. The people who stand there and search people down, and they must go through. How many times must they say, you're not allowed that in your bag, you're not allowed that?
Yeah.
And my
Shoes off, sir.
People like my wife go, well, I was the last time I came through. And they went, you weren't, darling, you weren't. Oh, I'm sure I was allowed this in my bag. Just why? You know what I mean? I'm never stopped. And they say, you're not allowed that in your bag.
You never argue back, you just do as you're told.
Yes, but I don't come with a pint of milk in my hand luggage, do I? Whereas people, you get people and they sort of take out a gallon of petrol or something and think, oh, I didn't know I wasn't allowed this in my bag. I was the last time. Just ridiculous. You should just arrest them and put them in prison.
Well, I think if you turn up at airport security with a gallon of petrol, arresting is a very good idea. Anyway, we'll be talking to the expert, Nikki Calvin. She's going to be here at 20 past 8. All the top tips for travelling and steering clear of all the disruptions.
OK. And in the next 20 minutes, what we're going to do is we are going to show you a lot of football shirts, which you may want to bid for.
Just see them being lined up, actually, just behind the camera there.
And this is going to look very, very good. This is the kit man at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. His dad died. He's auctioning these off because he gets access to the Spurs players, the visiting players as well. So all for charity. And we're going to show you a full display if football shirts are your thing. Ruth would say to me, that's all we need, another football shirt hanging on the wall. 7:45 doing that.
And as always, we love to hear from you. Lots of emails coming in this morning. We'll try and read out the best
people
ones
saying
when
nice
we
things
can.
about you now?
Not yet.
Well, they better. They better, because otherwise I'll hunt you down if you don't say, because Isabel needs cheered up today.
Well, you did, stitch me up.
I didn't stitch up.
Hung me up to dry.
I didn't stitch up. I just pointed out you were cold.
Oh, stop. Don't start again. Right, Paul Coyte's here. I'll leave you to it.
OK.
It's time.
The newspapers, just before we get into Paul, let's have a look at those. Daily Express, first of all, says, we'll bowl you over. The England captain Ben Stokes promising 5 days of pure entertainment as England make ready to start their third test against New Zealand. Let's go to the Mirror. And Christian Eriksen, he's all yours. Apparently, that means that Spurs have waned on their interest about re-signing him, and they're saying, Man United, he is all yours. But what way will he sign? We'll talk about that with Paul now. And get rich quick. Chelsea players want the club to sign the Brazilian star to replace Lukaku. This is Richarlison here at Everton. And that is in the Sun. Right, Paul, here we go. Look, I just want to start with those headlines, first of all. I mean, the idea with Christian Eriksen, right, he's on a free now from Brentford.
Correct.
London is his home. Brentford would work well for him. He could re-sign there. He could go to Spurs. United, they're now saying in the Sun, in pole position for him. I think he's a good player, but I'm not sure United need him.
You don't think so?
Look at midfield. I mean, with Fernandes, is he going to play along Bruno?
It's true. I'm one of these people that when you get fans who go, oh, I'm not sure I want him here, or I think he's going to be costing too much money. As far as being a fan's concerned, I'm like, well, you know what? I don't want players to leave my club.
Yes.
I want players to come in. I don't care how many players come in. It's not me that's spending the money.
Yes.
But if there's something that they can do for the club, then I think all the better. Christian Eriksen, I mean, we know the story of Christian Eriksen. He was at Spurs, went to Inter Milan, and then the cardiac arrest that happened at the Euros. Had the defibrillator fitted, but then in Italy, which I find very bizarre, I'm no doctor, but they'd say that they cannot play with those fitted to their heart. So come back over to here, play for Brentford, and he's been terrific for Brentford.
He has been terrific.
He's just made such a difference. So
who else? I mean, we talked with Carlson there from Everton, but there are other free transfers available as well. So
of course there is.
They're talking about Carlson going to Chelsea.
Yeah, we're talking about 50 million for that one.
That's naturally enough. Who else is out there on the market?
Well, Gareth Bale. Now Gareth Bale This is another interesting one because his contract ended at Real Madrid. Still a fantastic footballer. There's no questioning that. 31 years old, but it's where does he go? Now, there was people wondering whether he was going to retire should Wales not get into the World Cup, which they have. So he's the captain.
And he needs to play.
Got to play. But I also know that he doesn't want to get injured. So
and he is a bit of a sick note, isn't he?
He is a little bit. We have had those problems before. So he's got to choose wisely as where he wants to go. I don't think money is going to be an issue now. He's got more money than he could ever dream of.
Say he would compromise on the money. That's what you're saying.
I think he would. Right. I really think he would because people are talking Cardiff at the moment.
Cardiff. Would you be talking Cardiff?
I would be talking Cardiff. You know, you come from the area.
Yeah.
It's almost like the perfect swan song, isn't it? Although to use swan, which is probably the worst thing to say when you've got Swansea down the road, but Cardiff, I think, would work for him. It's dropping down a level. It's a matter of keeping himself fit. It's a matter of keeping himself playing. But does he want to then another big move to the Premier League? And also, we've got to be honest, Eamonn, how many Premier League clubs would definitely want Gareth Bale? I mean, you certainly think straight away, everybody will want him. But I'm not quite so sure.
It's the injury record.
It is.
What you get for your money, which... Paul Pogba. I mean, I thought he was off to Juventus.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Juventus. Yeah. But again, it's always going to be big clubs that are going to be mentioned with Juventus, but with Paul Pogba. But again, after what's happened at Manchester United, it still amazes me that every club would go, yeah, we'd have him because we know what a player he can be, but what a player will he be?
I never saw the player he can be.
And I think there was half an hour once, wasn't there?
Maybe half an hour.
In a game.
I mustn't have gone to that game. I mean, a lot of us very disillusioned with him. Right, F1 news. We're a couple of weeks away now from the British Grand Prix, of course, at Silverstone. Sir Jackie Stewart talking about Lewis Hamilton.
No, Jackie Stewart was on with you, wasn't he? Only just the other day. And Jackie Stewart's been saying that maybe now is the time for Lewis Hamilton to retire. Now, Lewis Hamilton, we know he's won more Grand Prix than anybody else. He's probably, I don't think there's much argument, the fact he's the best that there's ever been. And it's not going well for him at Mercedes at the moment. And he's not happy with the car, not happy with the performance. And we've often spoken about different sport legends like even Roger Federer. You don't want to just disappear.
Buy out at the top.
You'd rather go out at the top.
So 37.
Yeah, he's 37. He's been doing this a long way. I mean, Jackie Stewart says he's got music, he's got culture, he's got clothing, and the rag trade would be suitable for him. I don't know whether he's going to, open some tailors or haberdashers somewhere. I don't know whether the rag trade is going to be the right thing for him. I think he'll be all right for quite some time, but it'll be interesting to see whether he actually does retire at the end of the season, because where does he go unless the car Mercedes?
I want to talk about this Live series, this Saudi Arabian-backed golf series that's there. Now, it's not so much as who is signing up for it, it's who's speaking out about it. And I think I'm very, very proud of Rory McIlroy on this one.
Yeah, because he said right from day one, it's all about the money, and he's not happy about players going over to it. I understand when players do it, because we're talking about, look at Phil Mickelson, 160 million quid.
Yes, but then
just to join.
Who's the latest one joining?
Well, it's Brooks Koepka is the latest. And the thing is, the list seems to be, whereas it started off with older players and lesser-known players, then we've got Brooks Koepka, who's a Masters winner. We've got Bryson DeChambeau as well.
I want to talk about him because Rory basically says about him, and I heard him speaking on this, and he said, these players say one thing and then they do another. So, there doesn't seem to be any principle about it. As you say, at the end of the day, the money is talking on this one.
Well, Brooks Koepka was interviewed at the US Open, and he was asked about this and was very cagey. He didn't actually say then, there's absolutely no way I'm joining, although that had been mentioned before. And he got very annoyed when anybody was asking him about it, I think because word had got out that he was going to go. So now he is going to get a payoff. I mean, it's going to be, we're talking about 100 million. It's going to be around that because he's one of the best players in the world. So we'll just have to see. Now, the other one that's being talked about is Colin Morikawa. Now, they're getting younger and more successful, and this is going to eat more into the PGA. Now, Colin Morikawa has come out and said, no, it's a lie, I'm not going to join. But does everybody have their price? It seems that Rory doesn't. It seems that Tiger Woods doesn't, because he was offered 400 million. But the thing for Tiger Woods, the most important thing for him now, I mean, he's come to the end of his career, he's made his money, is his legacy, and he wants to win the Open. It's the 150th Open next month at St Andrews. That's what it's all about for him. It's not about the money. But for others that are in the middle of their career thinking, you know what, it's an easy life, 12 rounds a year, don't have to go schlepping around the PGA, I can just take the money and see how we go from there. Briefly,
tell me, in 15, 20 minutes' time, you're going to introduce us to your mate, the kit man at Tottenham.
Yep.
And there's going to be a lot of football shirts, which I think people will be interested in.
This is incredible. Steve Dukes. Now, Steve Dukes is a great guy. He's the kit man. You'll see him, and always the kit man is sitting just behind the manager. And Steve has started a collection. Now, this is raising money for the Hertfordshire and Essex Air Ambulance Service. Yes. Now, he lost his dad. Yeah. They helped out a huge amount and tried their best to save him. So he's doing his best to pay that back. So with his contacts, all the kit men know each other. Football, it's almost like a cottage industry. Everybody knows each other. And he has got this amazing collection of signed memorabilia, shirts from everybody. Yeah. And you know what? And the Ronaldo shirt sitting there has got your name.
OK, excellent. What is the Ronaldo? Is it a Man United Ronaldo? Of course it is. That's OK.
Yeah, of course I wouldn't offer you any other shirt. Of course I wouldn't.
Just because it was a Real or something.
No, I knew you wouldn't.
United one.
I wouldn't dare do that to you. No, it's a United one.
Right, OK, I might be bidding on that.
To Eamonn. Best wishes.
OK, good man. So Steve Dukes, we look forward to him in 15 minutes' time. Paul, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
You'll be introducing him to us for that. Thank you.
Stay with us. Coming up, we're going to go through the newspapers, the front pages, the inside with Liz Kershaw and David Wooding. That's after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good to see you again. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Straight to the papers now with the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, that's David Wooding, and the broadcaster Liz Kershaw. And Liz, it's this inquiry into the child abuse situation in Rotherham. Rotherham police don't come out of this well. This is in The Sun.
Yeah, it's in all the papers, but the Sun splashes, how have no coppers been fired? And I think that's the question most people are asking. You meet some interesting people here at GB News in the Green area, and I met Maggie Oliver a few weeks ago. Absolute heroine, as far as I'm concerned. She was a police officer, detective in the Greater Manchester Police, and stuck to her guns.
Yeah.
She fired all her bosses. The drama ensued from that, 3 girls. And this is particularly close to my heart because apart from Rotherham, the other place beginning with RO is Rochdale, and it all happened there. So there's been an inquiry into how the police conducted themselves, South Yorkshire Police, over the years in relation to complaints or allegations or incidents. And here's some of the highlights. I'm going to the Times for this bit. The father of one girl who was sexually exploited was told by an unnamed senior officer, this has been going on for 30 years. The police can't do anything about it because of racial tensions. A girl who's regularly found with the same man after going missing from home was handed to police by the perpetrator as part of a deal not to arrest him. The police recorded inaccurate, incomplete, contradictory information, led to the murder of a missing girl. Police did nothing after finding a girl in a car with a perpetrator. Girl who was groomed was arrested herself, not the perpetrator. Traffic officer stopped a car. There was a girl in it who was being exploited, 15, and she later reported that she didn't know what was going on because the Asian officer was speaking to the driver in a language she didn't. I mean, it just goes on and on. Nothing was done. And there's about 10 police officers who've been investigated. Some of them have conveniently retired, so no penalties for them. And others have just been given a bit of a slap on the wrist. It's not just... It's the numbers involved. 1,400 kids, girls, 265 complaints, 43 blunders. It just went on for years and absolutely nothing was done. Meanwhile, The Sun, I picked The Sun because 4 pages later on page 17, Josh Widdicombe, the comedian, was doing a stand-up show in a club and told a joke which a member of the audience found offensive. So he was then visited by police and interrogated and asked to explain the meaning and the context of his joke. What a waste of time. I was reading this week...
So sorry, what was this got to do with this case?
No, I'm saying
sorry,
in contrast to police pursuing...
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, and I was reading this week, there was an interactive map in one of the papers, I think it might have been the Telegraph, how many burglaries are investigated in your area, put in your postcode. And where I live, something like 98% of burglaries don't even get, the home doesn't even get visited by the police. So there was a case of an elderly woman in her 80s who'd been burgled while she was in the house, completely traumatised. It took the police about 3 days to come round. And it's like when our cars were being vandalised where I live, across the village, we were told, you'll just have to get CCTV.
But this can't be ignored from here on in.
No,
the spotlight has been shone on this. Apparently, according to local people, it still goes on.
Yeah. I don't live in Rochdale anymore, but I know, I've heard stories, just anecdotal, but speaking to Maggie Oliver, who was on that patch, it was absolutely shocking. And I just think, keep on, Maggie, because
she is partly on this morning.
She's coming on brilliant.
8:45.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for her,
working with a number of the officers from Greater Manchester Police, she said although there is a sort of more open-hearted approach from some of them, 33 new cases have been referred in the last 6 months alone.
Yeah, and she has a charity now which helps girls. They run a helpline, and these girls can ring that number, and she raises funds to make sure the phone lines are manned. Yeah, appalling.
OK, another big story of the day, of the era, David, strikes. And this is about specifically Mick Lynch, who's come to the fore throughout all of these rail disputes and being described as acid-tongued and winning or outwitting in media interviews. I mean, how very dare he? This is Times, page 8 and 9. But I mean, lots of examples of where he's been in these big sort of on-screen clashes.
Yes, he's public enemy number one would think, but in fact, lots of people, me included, are getting a sneaking admiration for Mick Lynch, the RMT leader, the man behind the rail strike, which is causing chaos across the country. I personally wrote a piece in Sunday's paper comparing him to Arthur Scargill, which wasn't completely complimentary, but I actually, having seen him perform on TV a little, I'm beginning to think he's quite a charismatic character and he's going to be a tough act for the government. And the Times have caught on to this feeling that I've had the last 24 hours or so. And they've looked at him and said that he's become a bit of a cult hero. And they've named some of these instances where one presenter on another channel was trying to...
Kay Burley.
Was
on
it?
Sky, yeah.
Was trying to pin him down over violence on the picket line and said, is it like the miners' strike? And he kept turning around and saying, well, does it look like the miners' strike? You know, and he doesn't lose his cool.
Mm.
He's quite calm and charming in many ways, but still combative. And he then described it. I think this presenter was saying, you know, what will you do if they cross the picket line? Well, we'll try to persuade them. But what will you do if they say no? And he said, well, we'll do what a picket line does. We'll try to persuade them. And he didn't get ruffled. He called another presenter who accused him of being a Marxist of talking twaddle. And but he does it with a lovely bit of elan. And I think he's quite a
Slick
character.
operator.
Yes. So you should get him on here and see whether you can.
You can handle him.
He
he sat on Newsnight the other night, and he opposite a Tory MP, and he just kept going. Everything this MP said, he just went liar. Liar, liar.
OK, CBI boss says cut taxes. This is the Telegraph business section.
Yeah, outgoing CBI head says, that's Lord Billy Moria, says we've got to cut taxes. He says the pandemic showed the state can be nimble when required, and he's saying in order to save the economy and promote growth, taxes have got to be cut. And among other things, he said fuel duty cuts. 5% so far. It's not a drop in the ocean. All energy bills, VAT should be removed off that. Just on the fuel, I was saying earlier, petrol's now in old money, £8.50 something a gallon. And out of that, the government currently with fuel duty and VAT compounding it on the fuel duty and the fuel, means every time you put a gallon of petrol in your car, the government's getting £4.25. So when I filled up yesterday and it cost me £118, I paid £61 in tax on the spot.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me they can't... Last time I was on, the figure I read in the paper that day was the Chancellor's raked in an extra £12 billion since Russia invaded Ukraine in fuel duty. Also, hospitality, he wants that. I mean, I said... I paid £9 for a fish, no chips. You know, 20%.
Yeah, £9.
20% of that.
Is it haddock or cod?
It was cod. But
Can't get haddock at the minute.
No.
I like haddock.
Yeah, 20% of that is VAT.
Yeah.
You know, during the worst crises in this country, like the Second World War, fish and chips were never rationed. It was the poor. Protein and carbs, and I don't see why we pay 20% tax on that.
OK, well, if you've got a view on what Liz has to say, get in touch. You can tweet at GB News with the time at 10 minutes to 8. This is the latest news situation.
The Prime Minister will hold talks with the Prince of Wales in Rwanda today. It's after Prince Charles reportedly described the policy of flying asylum seekers to Rwanda as appalling. Boris Johnson will join Prince Charles in the nation's capital for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
Thousands of railway workers staging their second strike of the week. That's happening today. Talks failed yesterday to resolve this row over paid jobs and conditions. Only around 1 in 5 trains expected to run today. The RMT accusing the Transport Secretary of wrecking negotiations. He, of course, denies that.
The Education Secretary says a teacher strike would be unforgivable after the National Education Union said it would strongly encourage its members to walk out over pay and workload. Writing in The Telegraph today, Nadeem Zahawi said it would be irresponsible as young people have suffered more disruption than any generation due to the pandemic.
The UK Health Security Agency is urging you to make sure you've got a polio vaccine and they're up to date after traces of the virus were detected in a routine sewage inspection in London. The disease, which was officially eradicated in the UK in 2003, was discovered at a treatment works which serves 4 million people in the north and the east of the capital. We're going to introduce you to a man called Steve Duke. Steve is the kit man at Tottenham Hotspur FC. He tragically lost his dad in a cycling accident, but he keeps his dad's memory alive. And not only that, he is also supporting Essex and Hearts Air Ambulance because these shirts raise a lot of money for them. Let's go to Paul Coyte and let him introduce you to Steve.
Thanks, Eamonn. I mean, look at this. It looks like they've got the greatest market stall that there's ever been. We've got shirts from every major club, all signed as well, and actually players' shirts. Now, let me introduce you to Steve Jukes. So Steve, who's in charge of all the kit and all the equipment at Tottenham Hotspur. Steve, it's great to see you. Eamonn mentioned, firstly, before we actually talk about the amazing shirts that you've got here, this is all about your dad, isn't it?
Yes. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, I lost my dad in a bicycle accident. He was just going to literally pop up the road to a local farm to pick something up. And he said to my mum, I'll be back in about half hour, normal day. And unfortunately, he never arrived back. I got a call when I was at the training ground. And my brother called me, my partner called me, and they said, air ambulance is on site, and I knew straight away then that it was something serious. He got put on a life support machine on the Monday, and then on the Saturday we had to turn the life support machine off. For me, obviously, all my family struggle. The air ambulance themselves were so supportive afterwards. They came round to my mum's house. They supported my mum. They actually went into brief details on what actually happened to my dad and the actual work they'd done on my dad. And it was really reassuring knowing that he didn't suffer. So for me, it was important to carry on for my dad's legacy. I think it's really important for that for me. And if I can help save lives by doing what I'm doing, it just makes me feel better as well.
Well, you've already done this once before, haven't you? And I've raised a huge amount of money for Essex and Herts Air Ambulance. So how much was it you raised last time?
So last year I'd done a Just Giving page which raised 13,000.
Wow.
And then the auction itself done 34,000. So I'm up to 47,000 at the moment.
Right. Now let's look at the merchandise, shall we?
Yep.
I mean, this is just an incredible collection of shirts. Now where have they all come from? Because obviously we've got AC Milan down here. I know we've got Bayern Munich over here. Of course, we've got the greatest ever, the England captain Harry Kane there, which is signed. So I guess it's through contacts in the football world. And do you know other kitmen then? So everybody knows each other, and it's like, well, this is what I'm doing. Here's a shirt.
With the Premier League, it's a unique little network. Everyone knows each other. We get to see each other a couple of times a season. So we just know each other, and we're a tight little community. Obviously, from being in Europe, I've got to meet other kit guys from other countries. So I've been lucky and fortunate enough to have contacts with those and pick up the phone and ask for little bits of help now and again.
Well, let's have a little look then, because we've got the one that I think Eamonn, I'm sure, will be bidding on, the Ronaldo shirt, which is signed by Cristiano Ronaldo, and we've a Liverpool one here. What sort of money will people be able to get these for? Because I know obviously we're raising as much money as possible for charity, but these are things that you can't buy because these are actual match-worn shirts. They've actually belonged to the players. So where are we with the auction at the moment?
So the Ronaldo one is £2,000.
Yep.
You've got the Kevin De Bruyne, I think it's about 1,600 now.
Right, great.
Ibrahimovic is about £500-600. Gareth Bale's about 1,500. The Real Madrid.
By the way, what is the Gareth Bale shirt? It's not a Cardiff shirt by any chance, is it?
Not yet. I've already asked for one.
Okay, we'll see how that one goes then for the future. And where does anybody go if they want to bid or go to the Just Giving page? Is there a website where you can bid for this?
So it's Graham Budd Auctions.
Right.
Is the actual auction site where you can actually bid for these shirts. The auction closes on the 26th, so I really want to sort of get it out there now for people to start making bigger offers.
Right, fine.
I've got a Just Giving page, because not everyone can afford, unfortunately, to buy the shirts.
Of course.
If everyone could even put £1 in, if everyone's watching and everyone put £1, then it's just going to put the Just Giving page up as well. And also on the Instagram account, you can see all the options and everything else. Brilliant. If you want to get any more details.
So briefly, in all, how many have we got? How many shirts are there?
79 I've got.
79
it's
shirts.
Not just football.
Everything, so sports across the board. It's an amazing auction, and best of luck with it as well. And I'm sure Essex and Hertfordshire Air Ambulance is so pleased with what you're doing, and they should be very proud, and I'm sure your dad will be as well. So thank you so much
My pleasure.
for coming in, Steve. It's good to see you. This is the one for Eamonn, I think. We'll just see how much we can bid. I think he deals in cash. So there we go.
I will be on that website and bidding for that, Steve. And, condolences to you about your father, and good luck for every penny you raise for the Air Ambulance.
Much appreciated. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break. Stay with us. After that, we have more on the Commonwealth Summit in Rwanda as Prime Minister Boris Johnson touches down ahead of his meeting with Prince Charles.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Plenty more very warm, hazy sunshine for many of us today, but we are going to start to see more and more thunderstorms breaking out, and there is a Met Office warning in place. Weather fronts close to the far north of Scotland, but actually through today, pushing away. It's this one spreading up from the south that's bringing the risk of thunderstorms, and some big downpours are likely in places by this afternoon. Many of us starting with plenty of blue sky and sunshine, but clouding over across the southeast, sunshine turning increasingly hazy, and as the temperatures build, so we are more likely to see thunderstorms breaking out. Very hit and miss, not everywhere seeing them, far from it, but there is the potential for thunderstorms, certainly across the Midlands, East Wales, southern parts of England during this afternoon. Hit and miss affairs, but where they do occur, they could cause some disruption. The highest temperatures likely over northern England, northern parts of the Midlands, where we could get up to 30 Celsius this afternoon. But as I said, that heat and humidity may well trigger further thundery showers during the afternoon and the evening, spreading further northwards. And we continue to have the risk of thundery showers coming up from France across the south overnight tonight. It will be another pretty warm night as well. Towns and cities staying in the mid-teens generally, so not a particularly comfortable night. It won't be as hot, certainly across northern England, the Midlands on Friday. Generally a bit more cloud around and a continued likelihood of heavy thundery showers drifting up. Still plenty of fine sunny weather, certainly across southern eastern parts of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, though, thicker cloud moving in with some outbreaks of rain, and that is a weather front which will start to switch things up for all of us come the weekend. As I say, still fairly warm in the sunshine, 24, 25 across the east, but not as hot as today. And that cold front, that band of rain in the west, spreads much cooler air across all parts of the UK. And then this low pressure system will dominate, bringing plenty of showers, certainly in the west, through the weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister will meet Prince Charles in Rwanda today as they attend a summit of Commonwealth leaders.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 8 on Thursday, the 23rd of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister has landed in Rwanda ahead of talks with the Prince of Wales. It's the first time the two have met since Prince Charles privately criticised the government's migrant policy. The meeting will take place during the Commonwealth Heads of Government, where the PM is expected to focus on the economic benefits of the organisation.
Talks to avert a second national rail strike broke down again last night, with millions of you facing another day of travel chaos. It comes as the government prepares to lay out legislation that would allow agency workers to cover striking staff.
The Chancellor has defended restoring the pensions triple lock, which could see state pensions rise by 10%. This comes after yesterday's announcement that inflation has risen to 9.1%.
And remember, we love to hear from you. Email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. Get involved in the conversation. We are the People's Channel after all. And you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest on the big stories everyone's talking about.
And you're talking about pensions. David saying it's time our pensions were increased. We have the worst pensions in Europe. The whiners will benefit when they become old enough to do so. Peter saying the state pension, half of the minimum wage when calculated at 40 hours a week. They should be at the same level as the living wage.
Qualified nurses and teachers are on 30 grand a year. I don't think that's living on the breadline. According to Anna in Northumberland, pension is around 150 to 180 per week. Now, that is living on the breadline. Taking into consideration that pensioners have worked all their lives, they are entitled to a rise. Keep your thoughts coming in.
Yes, and the thought for our next news story comes from Dan. Prince Charles to keep his nose out of government policy. Talking about that next.
And that is our top story this morning. The Prime Minister's holding talks with Prince Charles in Rwanda during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
Well, this is the first time the two of these men have met since it emerged that the Prince of Wales, in private, said that the government's Rwanda migration plan was appalling.
Well, Boris Johnson is expected to use the summit to promote the economic benefits of the Commonwealth, and we can speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, about all of this first of all. So we've just seen those pictures, Carrie Johnson and Prime Minister Boris Johnson touching down in Kigali for this conference. We know that Prince Charles is already there, pictured in the front of the papers this morning at the Genocide Memorial there in the capital. Tell us about this meeting between the two, because the government were really quite annoyed by the comments that came out from Prince Charles.
They certainly were. There seems to be no love lost between the Prime Minister and Prince Charles, which is why this meeting does feel a little bit orchestrated. We weren't expecting this even a week ago, and this popped up in the last few days. Clearly a PR attempt to try and repair those relationships. It's widely expected one day Prince Charles will be king, and clearly relationships between government and monarchy need to be as strong with the heir as they are with the incumbent. And so this is really going to be trying to paper over some of those cracks. But also we've seen from the royal family in the last few weeks a real attempt to be more in touch with the people of the United Kingdom. Clearly, there's been a big drive from younger members of the royal family to be more emphasising issues like the environment and trying to show that they are a modern royal family. So perhaps, I mean, there's some speculation in political circles that this Rwanda appalling comment may well have been a little less non-deliberate than might have been thought.
We should point out that this meeting that's happening in Kigali, it's twice been delayed due to the pandemic. It is pure coincidence, the timing of all of this. And yet, you'd have thought the Prime Minister touching down in a country where one of his flagship policies is in fact up and ready to go, that he would go and visit it. Why do you think the Prime Minister's not doing that?
You'd think so, and we have seen pictures of this facility where asylum seekers will be living in Rwanda, funded by the British taxpayer, of course, and it doesn't look too shabby, frankly. It looks like quite a nice place to stay. It's interesting that the Prime Minister won't go there, but perhaps this might be the imagery of a rather nice place funded by British taxpayers being completely empty as it stands. It might serve to remind people that the British government failed to get that first flight up and running, although they do think that they will be able to get flights going in the medium term, particularly with the reforms to the Human Rights Act that Dominic Raab announced yesterday. I think perhaps it's the imagery that they don't want the Prime Minister to be seen to be walking around a completely empty facility. That might not be the best look for the government.
Well, I just agree with both of you here. I just think bad advice. I mean, if you're going to support it, show that you're behind it, show that you've nothing to worry about with this. But it does seem to be a popular policy.
It's interesting looking at different sectors of the public, and often in polling we talk about archetypes of voters. and which groups people fall into. Now, this might be a more popular policy in some parts of the country and a less popular policy in other parts of the country. We often hear about the stereotype of Islington lawyers trying to oppose it, whereas up in parts of the Red Wall, this has been a popular issue. I was speaking to the Conservative candidate in Wakefield a couple of days ago, who told me that when Priti Patel was walking around the constituency on a bit of a walkabout before knocking on some doors, two people stopped her in the streets and started shouting, two men. And initially they thought it might be abusive until they realised actually it was supportive. These two local Wakefield men were shouting at Priti Patel, sort out those lawyers and get the Rwanda policy moving. So in some areas it's very popular, but I think we also can't emphasise enough that in other areas of the country this is something that doesn't sit that easily with people.
We can't talk too much about Wakefield. Of course, there is a by-election taking place there today. But I just want to reflect the fact that today is the 23rd of June. It's a big anniversary. It's a Brexit anniversary. And as such, that'll be in the back of the Prime Minister's mind when he's there in Kigali talking to the 54 member state organisation of the Commonwealth, trying to drum up business, essentially.
Certainly. I think a big argument of the referendum several years ago now was to expand the United Kingdom's horizons, to look beyond to new trading partners. And of course, negotiations with India, a historic friend, have begun already, and certainly more trade negotiations are being lined up with many countries around the world. But when it comes to the Commonwealth, I think this isn't about these formal trade negotiations now. The Commonwealth isn't a trade zone, it's not a trade bloc, it's an association of countries. And so fostering those informal connections, those deals and that sort of sense of kinship will be a big driver today. It's over 50 countries and really exciting growth areas. Some of these countries are some of the fastest growing countries in the world. So it's a really exciting opportunity to re-engage with these old friends.
OK, Tom.
When you're out and about, Tom, there coming to work this morning, what did you notice traffic-wise in London? Anything? Was it quiet or...?
There were areas that felt really quite busy, but other areas that felt really quite empty. I passed by Victoria Station on my way in, and that was a completely empty area. However, some other roads did feel pretty jammed. I think it felt a little bit more busy than that first day of strikes earlier this week.
OK, well, we're going to find out now because the talks to try and resolve the rail strike broke down again last night. The RMT have accused the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, of, in their words, wrecking negotiations. Shapps says, no, not me. He denies all of that.
Well, it means that today rail strikes are underway once again, and we're joined by our national reporter Paul Hawkins, who's at London Waterloo Station for us this morning, and Rosie Wright, who's in front of a picket line at London Euston Station. Good morning to you both. Paul, to you first of all, bring us up to date on the situation there, where once again, what is normally a very, very busy terminal, very quiet this morning.
Very, very quiet. The station opened at 7 o'clock. Few passengers have trickled in. They're staring at the board, trying to work out how they're going to make their onward journey. Only 20% of services are running, so very few trains from here. Difference between today and Tuesday, of course, is that there isn't a tube strike on, so people can get to the fringes of London and then they can make their onward journey on the tube. So the tube is expected to be very busy today. Also, the buses and bikes should be interesting when people are trying to get home later if they're on foot, given that thunderstorms are forecast for London and the south of England. Now, this dispute is ongoing. As you say, the RMT accusing the government of stopping Network Rail from taking redundancies off the table. The government say, no, that's not true. Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, calling the RMT effectively a liar. In fact, each side really, over the course of the last few days, calling each side a liar and saying that the other side started it. But talks are ongoing. And the RMT has to be said, they said that they do have a cordial relationship. That was how Mick Lynch, the boss of the RMT, described their relationship with the rail franchises. But there's obviously friction with the government, and some of the language that's been used hasn't been conducive to talks. The government also announcing, by the way, that it will introduce legislation. It could be in place as soon as July to fill the gaps when there are strikes with agency workers. Very controversial with the unions. They say they have a right to strike, and they also say that it's unsafe for agency workers to be doing safety critical roles that the normal salaried staff do. Network Rail, though, say that while key safety critical roles require many months of training, there are many other roles where they could be used, such as in security operations, which would make a real difference. One note of optimism, up in Liverpool, the Transport Salaried Staffs Association, they're another rail union, they did reach an agreement with Merseyrail for a 7.1% pay increase. So there's an example of where a union can strike a deal with the rail operators when it comes to pay. Still a real terms cut, but at least it'll mitigate some of the pain.
Very much indeed. We move from Waterloo. Rosie there. Just remind me, where are you, Euston?
Yeah, Euston train station just outside. I'm right in front of a picket line where Mike Lynch has actually just been speaking to picketers, but also press. The talks resume, the RMT talks resume in about 20 minutes' time. And the atmosphere here is one of not huge optimism, but from the Assistant General Secretary, real determination, they say, to get the best deal for their workers. Now, I got to Euston Station this morning about 5 o'clock this morning. It should have been open, but it was closed because there weren't enough staff to open up. The first train went at 7:30, and I put the story of one gentleman, Tim, who's still waiting for his train. He arrived last night. This is what happened to him. You are en route from Southampton to the Lake District. Yes. Just describe your journey to me so far.
It's been a bit of a long one. I got here yesterday evening. I should have got the train for 6:30. The coach who took me from Southampton was late because of the traffic, so I didn't get here and I missed the train. Unfortunately, there were no other trains after that until 8:30 this morning. So I've been stranded here all night. I've had to stay at the station and I've had to wait outside until they open the gates now.
So how many hours is your journey going to have taken?
All in all, probably nearly 24 hours.
I mean, the only sort of respite is that it hasn't been raining, but it's been pretty grim for you. Look, you've been massively inconvenienced and you're not going on holiday, you're going to work.
I am. I'm starting a new job. I was meant to be there last night to start this morning, and I'm obviously now late. So I'm probably going to get a late mark, which isn't good.
What does a late mark mean?
I'll probably just get in trouble.
And despite the inconvenience you've gone through, are you in support of the strikers?
Not really. I mean, I guess the guys are all sort of got good pensions and good holidays, good pay, and obviously doing the strikes like they have is causing disruption and chaos for everyone. It's making people late for work, obviously missing appointments. You know, it's not really what the country needs at the moment.
They'll say what we need is better pay. Look at the rising cost of living and inflation. Do you have any sympathy with them?
I think we all need a rise in pay, not just the train and the travel industry.
Tim was fairly good-natured considering that he spent the majority of the evening outside. And when I put Tim's story to the Assistant General Secretary of the RMT, it was sort of sympathetic, but actually we want you to have more sympathy for our workers. As those talks start again in 20 minutes, the reality is that for many of us, it will be difficult to get to work, maybe to school exams, maybe to hospital appointments, but the RMT are absolutely standing firm. We need a fair deal. Now, when pushed on a number, that seems to be around 7%, but that is so far from what's currently on the table, about 3%. Negotiations start at 8:30, and I've been told, quote, like Brexit, they'll just go on until they're done. Does it look like we'll get a deal before Saturday to stop another third one? It looks very unlikely.
Morning. Your mic went on strike there as well, Rosie, so forgive me from that. Paul, thank you very much indeed as well. With the time just after 8:15, we're going to bring you up to date now with what else is making the news.
The UK Health Security Agency is urging people to make sure their polio vaccines are up to date after traces of the virus were detected in a routine sewage inspection in London. The disease, which was officially eradicated in the UK in 2003, was discovered at a treatment works which serves 4 million people in the north and the east of the capital.
US prosecutors say Ghislaine Maxwell should be sentenced to at least 30 years following her sexual abuse conviction.
Ahead of sentencing on the 28th of June, they've been saying she treated struggling young girls like disposable objects. However, lawyers for Maxwell say she's been scapegoated for Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and could serve just over 5 years in prison.
Media mogul Rupert Murdoch and the performer actress Jerry Hall are reportedly getting a divorce, according to the New York Times. The couple got married in March 2016 in central London. This is the fourth divorce for the 91-year-old. Talk on the programme about second homes, and there's always been a row about this sort of situation. People from bigger cities buying homes in seaside villages, for instance, and they could soon be banned in Brighton.
That's right. Proposals are being drawn up which will ban new build second homes and holiday lets in some areas of East Sussex. This comes after a wave of buyers during the pandemic pushed house prices to over £500,000. OK, we're now joined by Toby Sedgwick, and he's going to tell you what all of this means to him, because he's been one of the driving forces behind the campaign behind any proposed ban. Toby, good morning to you. Good to talk to you.
Morning.
Tell us your story, Toby. You're Brighton born and bred, I believe?
Yeah, I am. I've been living around here my entire life. I'm a renter. You know, I want to start a life here. I want to have a child. But the likelihood of me being able to ever afford a home is basically zero, unless something's done about the massive increase in house prices and the insane rents that we're all having to pay.
House prices as being squarely the responsibility of those people who are buying second homes?
It's not entirely, but certainly it's a big part of it. You look at Brighton, we've got over 2,000 officially registered second homes. That's just the registered ones. We've got 3,500 Airbnbs. You know, we're looking at thousands and thousands of homes that are sitting either empty or being used as short-term holiday lets, purely for profit, while we've got homeless people on the streets, we've got rents through the roof. It's just not good enough.
It's a difficult sort of dilemma. I mean, you're talking about things like Airbnbs and holiday lets, and you sort of think, you know, people work hard, they invest in a property. It's up to them to do what they want with it. I'm just wondering, how does it benefit your case, Toby, if you ban someone from letting out their property over the holiday season?
Fine, unless they're causing misery.
Oh, what a shame. Toby, we're having problems hearing you. I'm afraid we have to interrupt Toby there. Unfortunately, lost the sound there. The microphone gremlins up in action this morning. But it is a big dilemma, isn't it? I mean, Brighton's quite unique, I think, because it has lots of its own things going on, its own industries, big nightlife, all the rest of it. But we look at these sort of little tiny sort of chocolate box villages down perhaps in Devon or Cornwall, where there isn't much going on besides tourism. And you say to people, you can't have your second home here, you can't rent it out, it has to be for local people. But actually, they often sustain those economies. So what would be the solution if you ban people from getting second homes in places like that? Do they take their money overseas? Do the tourists then travel overseas instead of holidaying here in the UK? So that is the dilemma, I suppose, with putting these sorts of bans in place. We'd love to know your experiences of it and your thoughts on all of that.
But I noticed that any proposed ban that is coming in Brighton will be to do with new builds only. So it's not addressing the problem that they've got already. It's for what's going ahead. As you heard there, that we had difficulty with the connection on the microphone with Toby Sedgwick there. I'm now being told by our technical people that we have lost his line. Totally. Toby, our apologies to you. Sorry about that. But if it's a debate or it's something that interests you or affects you, do let us know. You can tweet us at GB News.
Look, stay with us. We'll take a quick break. After that, we'll be finding out why health chiefs are really worried about the potential return of polio after traces of it were found in London. That's after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We were talking earlier about, sometimes Isabel says things that...
No, sometimes Eamonn stitches me up and misrepresents me, and then you all jump on the bandwagon going, oh, she's a horrible person. Well,
Isabel, can I just say, there are at least 4 people that don't think you're a horrible person. This is a new campaign that's been launched on social media, and it's called Stand Up for Isabel, right?
You know, you forced me to swear once on air.
You did swear.
Could well happen again.
Well, I just tickled your tongue. It
There we go.
doesn't take much, does it? Leave Isabel alone, says Ian. This is to people on social media out there. Don't let them upset you, Isabelle. You're clearly a lovely person.
Emanate.
Yes, it was obvious to me Eamonn was joking.
Good.
John from Gate. I suppose you can't read these out.
No, don't read that one. That's embarrassing.
Oh, come on. You so want me. You're going to say you do. You want me to read this out.
I've read it. That's enough. It's very nice. John from Gateshead, thank you.
Is the classiest, most beautiful and lovely lady.
See, now I'm embarrassed again.
I think Eamonn is very... See, the producer's interrupting. They say, let's get out of this. Let's do... Keep quiet, Charlie. Keep quiet. This is the Isabel campaign. Stand up for Isabel. Isabel is the classiest, most beautiful and lovely lady on the telly. I think Eamonn's very lucky to be sat next to her, and your morning show is awesome.
Oh, well, I can't
mainly
disagree.
due to Eamonn, who brightens up the day.
I like
every
Susie,
day.
Mel. She
And
says, I think you're a nutcase like me. And that's why you and Eamonn make me smile every morning.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sue.
Robin says, I find it unbelievable if anybody is being nasty about Isabel. Total class.
There we go.
Intelligent, eloquent, well-informed, hard-working. Isabel is the daughter every father would want.
Oh, my gosh, tell my dad that.
Well, yeah. What about the girlfriend or wife that every man would want there as well? But anyway, that's the Stand Up for Isabel campaign.
Anyway,
I always tell
on.
you, if I say sarcastic things about you, it does you favours.
Yeah, in the end. Look, we've got to talk about polio now because this is a big worry. A lot of the front pages covering it this morning. There's shocking news yesterday that traces of this horrendous virus, which affects people in childhood and for the rest of their lives, has been detected in East London SERS. Let's talk to a doctor about all of this. Dr. Sarah joins us this morning. Sarah Kyatt, very good morning to you. Can't believe it. Here we are talking about polio.
I think it's worth reminding people that as part of routine surveillance, we know that these polio viruses are found in our sewage every year, but they're usually just one-off events. And so, it never appears again. It's just that on this occasion, we have seen several from the months of February to May, and that's what makes it more concerning.
OK, and of course, you know, lots of people who are get their children vaccinated may not even know what to look out for in terms of symptoms, but it is an incredibly serious virus. It affects...
But it hasn't spread anywhere
It hasn't,
yet.
but there are no cases of it yet, as Sarah was saying. But, I mean, it affects children and then it has lifelong implications.
Yeah, but it won't spread if people are up to date, Sarah, with vaccinations. Isn't that the point?
Absolutely, and our vaccination programme for polio is incredible. We, have a very high uptake in the UK. We just need to make sure we maintain that high uptake. And if you have any doubt as to whether you've had the vaccine, whether your child's had the vaccine, please do consult your GP practice.
Okay. All right. Well, good advice, I think, and just a bit of reassurance as people are concerned. And I think there's going to be a big drive, isn't there, in Hackney and parts of East London where they found these traces just to make sure everybody's vaccinations are up to date. I should point out it is part, as you say, of the regular childhood immunisation programme. And if people are in any doubt, there's the red book that most parents get issued with when they've got youngsters and they go for a jab.
Cheers, Doc. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers. We'll leave it there. Right, so this whole what are called summer of discontent has hit you if you are trying to holiday, and it's hit you particularly hard because of that. I mean, all those scenes about baggage piling up at terminals, flights being cancelled, plans totally disrupted, and now Ryanair staff are planning to strike with walkouts scheduled right across Europe.
The ground staff at Heathrow could also do the same. And we're asking, really, is it safe to book a holiday at the moment? And lots of people looking ahead to imminent school summer holidays as well. Let's speak to Nikki Calvin, a.k.a. Heads of the Points Guy UK, here to tell us more. Good morning to you. What advice can you give to people then if they're looking to their summer holidays and they're really worried about all of this?
Well, I think there's real reason to be worried. You've only got to look at the pictures, like you say, of the bags piling up at Heathrow or of huge queues at security. And I think people need to think hard about whether they need to travel in the next couple of months. I think my primary piece of advice is if you're able to delay a trip until after the peak summer season, that would be the way forward. But for a lot of people, if they've got kids in school and they need to go away in the school holidays, lots of people are, if they want to get away, they're going to have to get away in July and August. But the shame is that it doesn't look like the problems are going to get any better over those couple of months.
Well, you see, that's not good news. I would be one of the people that would say, why put yourself through all of this until things are more settled? Why bother with all of this? What's your attitude to travelling?
So I've been traveling quite a lot over the past few months for work, and I've had a real mixed bag of experiences. And so it's also important to remember that whilst hundreds of flights can get cancelled in a week, thousands and thousands more do go, and they do go on time. So there's plenty of people out there who are having positive traveling experiences. If you are going to travel and you're going to travel over the summer, I think going into things with an open mind and being well prepared, knowing you might have to wait, making sure you check your flight schedules well ahead of leaving for the airport, because if flights are cancelled, you don't want to be stuck in the airport. So being prepared for delays. And there's lots of small pieces of advice that I've got that can help people if they're going to the airports and they want to make sure they have a better experience. And for example, lots of airports now have a priority security queue, and you can pay just a £5 to use those priority queues, and that could save you an hour or two in the airport if the airport has it and if it's got enough staff to operate it. Because there's always a caveat with these things, because so many areas of the aviation industry are understaffed that even the tricks sometimes don't work because they can't open them or staff these things.
It really gets up my nose that, stuff that should be standard issue, you pay extra for. You should be put through those lanes anyway, as a matter of course. You have to pay to drop people off at an airport now as well. All these extra costs where they make money with these things. But the thing is, something really, really interesting, I really do get scared about, there's absolutely no point going on holiday, getting to your destination and not having suitcases. Believe me, if I got to a destination and Mrs. Holmes's 7 bags didn't arrive with me, well, I might as well just turn around and go back home, because life's not going to be worth living. So you've got a great idea, which I never thought about this before, trackers. So tell me about trackers, where you get them, how do you fit them? Tell us about a tracker.
Okay, so I also just need to admit here that I'm actually suffering this right now. I returned from abroad on Sunday and my suitcases have still not turned up, although I'm promised that they're about to arrive in the next couple of hours. So I've waited 4 days for them. But having trackers, so lots of different brands make them. There's a brand called Tile. Apple also make them. They're called AirTags. And they're tiny little chips that you can put inside your luggage. You can also attach them to your keys or put them in your wallet or other things that you lose regularly. And they hook up to your phone, and they use Bluetooth to connect to other phones that are around them and give a very accurate location. Now, there's one side of this where it says, well, what's the use of knowing where your bag is if it hasn't turned up? But actually, because of the chaos, lots of airlines can't even find the bags. And so I've had situations of our readers at the Points Guide, but also people on my staff who have gone to an airline and say, I have the location, I know where my bag is, I know you can't find it, here is where it is. And then the airline staff have been able to go out and actually locate that luggage and then return it to that passenger. So it's like, it's a little locator chip, and they're relatively cheap. You know, they start about 15 quid for a tag, and using it on your keys or in your luggage is a really great way for that extra bit of security, and at least to know like what country is your luggage in if it's lost.
What a time to be alive. I mean, really, this is what it's come to. It's crazy. I mean, I suppose if you don't want to do that, and if you've got medicine or formula for your kids and you can't afford to be separated from your bag, just don't check your bags in. Make sure you can take everything with you and shove it in the.
Who travels like that?
Well, just keep your essentials with you, or travel light if you can't be separated from your goods.
My essentials. By the time I put.
My mum travels like that. My mum will just travel with one little...
What, your glasses are essential, your medication's essential, your phone's essential. Yeah. You could go right through, your list could be never-ending. But it's not an attractive situation. But, Nikki, thanks. Nikki, we should get you in to do a summer special, I think, where is the best time to book, what's available, when you should book. And
how to avoid those cookies on your phone, increasing the price of flights as well. That's a real shocker, isn't it?
I mean, when you look
have a little look at what the cost of a flight is,
and then,
the phone remembers, the next time you go back, it's kind of manufactured it so that it's more expensive. I mean,
well, that's
just tell us a little bit.
That's theft.
But it happens, doesn't it?
No, it does happen.
Does it?
Lots of myths to be busted, and I'm happy to come back and do some myth.
Well, you can bust that one, Nikki. Just tell us, is that true? Is that correct, that you can get more expensive flights through your cookies?
I have never seen that be the case by clearing cookies, especially not with sites like Google Flights, which show all different airlines. So if you're using like big search sites, you're usually very safe. The other one is people say it's cheaper to book flights on a Tuesday. That's also not true.
Ooh, there you go. Just killed that dead. Brilliant. Well, we don't need to get you in then.
I hate to disagree with Nikki. He's talking rubbish. Bye, Nikki. Bye. See ya. Safe journey. Hope your luggage turns up. No, I have literally sat and thought, will I fly to Belfast on Tuesday or Wednesday? Look at what price is it on Tuesday, right? Do you know what? I'll have a think about it. 5 minutes later, go back. The price is completely different. It never goes down. It goes up all the time.
And I swear it's listening to you, whether it's your Alexa or whatever it is. Your phone knows you're thinking about going to Belfast, even if you haven't thought that you're going to Belfast. It's just mad. Anyway, we're going to take a break. After that, Liz Kershaw and David Wooding are here to take us one last look through the papers this morning. See you in a sec.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
For the last time this morning, a different look at stories in the papers from the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Mr. David Wooding, and the broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Liz, this is in the Times, and it's about people's perception of the BBC.
Yes, 39% of viewers... 39% think the BBC is biased. That's as opposed to 15% think ITV News is biased, and Channel 4 and Channel 5 the same. The BBC investigates its own complaints, not Ofcom. Initially, the BBC Complaints Department does it. My friend used to run that unit. Anyway, in the last 5 years, of 112 complaints about impartiality, that's surprisingly few, 22 were upheld and 90 were dismissed without explanation.
Well, do you know, if there was an explanation, sometimes it might just be as simple as, no, you were wrong.
Could be.
It's not biased, but it could be. The thing is, people believe they are right all the time. They just believe they're right? So no matter what you say. So I said something about Boris Johnson's appalling hair yesterday, the day before. So I'm biased against Boris Johnson.
And you just said something about Isabel.
Yeah, but, you know, the point is, you can't slag anybody else, you can't joke about anything. Fact. Boris Johnson has appalling hairstyle. So you can do what you want, you can report me and do whatever you want, but I think his hairstyle is a joke. And if he was my son or brother, I'd be saying, oi, have a word, mate, get that blooming
If he was your son, have you seen his dad's hair? It's inherited, it's in the genes he got.
It's still appalling hair.
All I was going to do was bring some insight from having worked in BBC News on radio and TV programmes. And I was watching the news the other night and I was absolutely appalled. It was about the so-called heat wave. And I actually looked up what a heat wave is according to the Met Office. And a heat wave is 3 consecutive days of above average temperatures, blah. And we had one day of 33 degrees. And then the next day it dropped. And then it's been hot. It was 28 yesterday, but it's really cold outside now. Anyway, it wasn't a heat wave. But no, the BBC News had this headline, heat wave,
but
3 degrees.
Was it unique to the BBC?
Liz, it was on every single one of those newspapers exactly the same because it sells papers or gets an audience.
Sensationalised, it sells. What they did, though, was they had on somebody to tell us that the end of the world was nigh. It was all about climate change. We were all going to die. And you know, no counter argument to that. I'm only saying this because from the mid-2000s, so 2005, I was presenting a breakfast show solo on my own, and I would be given scripts, intros to read like you have on the autocue.
But we don't read them, that's the difference.
Yeah, I didn't use them. I just put a line through them because there was no discussion. It was just that it would start off, somebody in the newsroom had written it. We all know that man-made activity is causing drastic climate change. No, we don't. Well, let's have 2 people on, you know, Warwick University on one side and somebody else on the... And let's discuss it and get the facts. I could give you more information, but the other one was, these BBC mantras, which was received wisdom in the newsroom, that were non-negotiable, and they included mantras on the climate, on immigration, on lots of other issues, and there was no diversity of opinion within the newsroom. So how were you going to get diversity of opinion on the air? I'm only saying report facts.
I would just say that having worked at BBC News as well, on radio and TV, more than anywhere I've worked anywhere else, the BBC there bent over backwards to try and make sure that everyone was... They would breathe down your neck, make sure everything was balanced. There were editorial charters, there were meetings, there were formal processes. It was the most sort of bureaucratic place I've ever worked in that sense as well.
Right.
But I found it to be, you know, they really worked hard on that.
Oh, right. I can only speak from personal experience over 35 years and, you know, being in the news side of it from 1992 to 20...
But in other news organisations, those opinions and those lack of diversity of opinions also exist. But I don't think there's the same sort of self-flagellation, having worked at Sky as well and lots of other commercials.
You see, because broadcast in general attracts people who are left of centre, and therefore their views can often be reflected. I would accept that, but I would put it across all broadcasts. But anyway, that's it.
Well, I think we're speaking to the converted. I think people are rejecting the established news services because of that. They're just sick of being preached at.
David, what do you want to talk about?
There's a good story in the Daily Mail about, which is a good human story, about a widower, aged 38, Ted Jennings, whose wife died while giving birth to twins 3 years ago. And he's been fighting a legal battle to use... The twins were the product of IVF, and he wanted to have a child by his wife. And the court stopped it because of the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority objected because she hadn't given her express permission in writing. Anyway, he's now won. A judge has said, we think that your wife would have wanted this, and he's allowed to use a surrogate mother to have a baby with his wife. It's an interesting one, that, because it will probably spawn all sorts of other cases now, because you do have to put it in writing and sign it, and she didn't do that. And there was some mix-up in the paperwork. Yeah. He's won the case, and I suppose, you know, if he wants that and he'd been married to this woman for some time, then perhaps he knew better than most people whether or not she wanted to have the baby.
Well, clearly the courts felt that, and good luck to him.
Interesting test case.
Yeah, Liz, let's look at this story in the Telegraph business pages. I know you always like the business pages, and this is about soaring inflation, particularly in relation to food prices.
Yeah, the scary thing is that food prices will push 20% higher during the first few months of next year, predicts investment bank Citi, as a result of the effects of global supply crunches. We're already seeing it, aren't we? And I made pork kebabs last night, and I thought to myself, we never used to eat pork, and now we seem to be having it quite a lot, Liz. Mix up the shopping bit. But it's so much cheaper than lamb and beef has now become. So it's tempting, and it's really scary how much food is going to go up in value. I'm relying on my COVID war chest, which is a cupboard full of tinned corned beef and tinned Fray Bentos student pies. You know, if the West
still going, is it? The COVID or the Brexit one as well?
Never touched it because doing it. But now food prices are going so high. But I just wanted to tie this in. If you want to look further afield to what could be the future, we've already got the most awful pictures on TV last night of starving 3-4-month-old babies in Sudan, in Kenya. There is a lack of rain, so no food production there, a drought, and famine. But they also rely so much on imported grain, maize, particularly in those African countries, from Ukraine and Russia, and it's just not getting through. So we might be worried that food's going to be 20% more. We might have to change our diet. I was thinking, I bet we end up eating less protein, you know, because they did in the war years. It was rationed, wasn't it? Meat, eggs, everything. But that is the Armageddon of what's happening with food supply in the world, and it's absolutely... The relief organisations just can't get hold of it out, because Odessa, the main port of Ukraine, is blocked by Russian mines and submarines. So the harvest is rotting. And although Ukrainian farmers have planted, for next year, if they can't get it out of the country, it's not going to get round the way. It's really scary stuff.
David, a couple of stories here. This is in the Star. Tomorrow is apparently bring your pooch to work day, your doggy to work.
Yes, I know you're off tomorrow, aren't you? You don't come in
I'm
on
off
Friday,
tomorrow,
but I mean, imagine dogs in the studio here. That'd be quite fun.
Well, I was at a police station last week doing some work, and they had dogs which they brought in, which deliberately calmed the staff in ways that reduced their stress. So they were petting dogs and things. Which
Schools
I thought,
have them now as
Do
well.
they?
Yeah, almost every school that I've looked at for my little ones, they seem to have a school mascot which is there to try and help with difficult feelings and upset children, and they go and have a little cuddle with the dogs.
Well,
Really nice.
there's a serious message behind this two-pager. They've done examples of dogs canines behind the counter, if you like, who have helped to drum up trade in a difficult time. People go into a shop and there's a dog there, puts them at ease, makes them feel relaxed, creates a conversation with the sales assistant, and there's some great examples of doggies who. There's a picture of a dog there with glasses on behind a typewriter. I'm sure that's made up by some artist, but it's an interesting how dogs do help business along.
Yeah, just help life along. Liz, here's the thing. I'm trying to find it in the paper, but I can't find it. But this is in the Mail, and it's in the letters section.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about the best invention that has happened in your lifetime. I'm trying to see where the letter is. Where
Well, it's the first letter. It's just,
First letter. All right.
I just thought it was an interesting thought. It's not
It is
a
a
news
very
report.
interesting thought.
My mother was born in 1912, so she would have been, 110 now. When she was 90, I asked her what would have been the best invention during her lifetime that had the most effect on her, and she said fairy liquid, because before the invention of liquid wash soaps, her hands were absolutely red raw with the products you used to get the grease off your plates. And stuff. So I was just thinking, what's come up of all the things that have come along in my lifetime? We didn't have central heating, we didn't have carpets, we had lino, we didn't have a fridge. Of course, we didn't have mobile phones. There was the internet.
I think basic things like washing machines. I mean, I can remember
washing
my mother
machines.
washing clothes by hand.
Yeah.
And the idea that you can just throw it all into something that washes them and dries them is amazing. I mean, I wanted to have some heads up on this, because you have the answer. I'll have the answer to this when I go home today. I'm driving home and said I should have said that. But things that spring to mind are things like remote controls for television.
Yeah.
Bleepers, remote controls for your car. I mean, the idea, can you ever think of going back and taking a key and it's iced in the morning and you can't get the key into the car?
Electric windows in the car. Do you remember when you had to...
Yeah.
Well, I remember sometimes my dad had to get... What was that thing that you used to put in the front of the car? And my dad would be down there...
The starting...
The starting handle.
The
and those indicators that flipped out.
Or do you remember when your car used to stall all the time? You had to have your anti-choke...
Yeah, the choke.
Colour television.
Colour television.
You know... You wouldn't be able to see your wonderful outfits, Isabel, but, you know, I remember when...
it was like witchcraft when I first saw it.
My dad getting a new job once, and my auntie came round and said, "Oh, new job, you'll be getting a colour television next, and you'll be buying a car."
Yeah, and he'd be renting the TV.
We all rented the TVs,
Yeah, rediffusion.
Yeah, radio rentals, whatever. But I remember, for me, my world changed. We got a colour television, and two things changed. Football in colour for the 1970 World Cup, right? That was absolutely amazing to see football in colour. And the second thing was then to realise television programmes like Star Trek, Lost in Space, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea were all in colour, and it was absolutely... And that's why snooker was so popular in the 70s, because of the colour, literally... colour as a result of that.
And satellite TV, because I remember when we first watched football matches in the early days, it had to be on radio. Satellite TV, it sounded really tinny, and you could hear like screeching in the back of the... Now, of course, it's just like they're in the next room. They're coming from the other side of the world.
So I would say there's now too much TV, there's too much choice, there's too much, because you end up just with no normal schedule. There's no sense of normality as to... What am I going to watch at 7? What am I going to watch at 8? Well, if you don't watch a film, you know, That's it. It's a film you choose on some sort of subscription channel. But that could make a programme in itself.
Yeah, I think what I remember from TV is Thunderbirds, and Jeff Tracy on the island would go, "Hello, Penny," and she'd, "Hello, Jeff," and he'd be looking at her on the watch, and she'd be looking at him on her watch, and I thought, that's impossible. But we do it now, don't we?
But it's like Star Trek, where they had the communicators, and, they would and that's like fact. That's like phones now. They just they would speak.
Wish you could beam me up, Scotty. That maybe
that's
one
what we're
day.
waiting for. That'll be next. Yeah. We've got to leave it there.
Next.
David Wooding, Liz Kershaw, thank you very much for going through the papers this Thursday with us. We'll see you both again soon. We're going to take a look at the headlines now with the time at 8:52. And the Prime Minister is to hold talks with the Prince of Wales in Rwanda today. This is after Prince Charles reportedly described the policy of flying asylum seekers to the country as appalling. Boris Johnson will join Prince Charles in the nation's capital for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
Thousands of railway workers are staging their second strike of the week today after talks failed to resolve the row over pay, jobs and conditions. Only around 1 in 5 trains is expected to run throughout the course of today.
The UK Health Security Agency is urging people to make sure their polio vaccines are up to date after traces of the virus were detected in a routine sewage inspection in London. The disease, which was officially eradicated in the UK in 2003, was discovered at a treatment works which serves 4 million people in the north and east of the capital.
About this this morning, and we're featuring it now because this long-awaited report on police failures in relation to child sexual exploitation in Rotherham. You will have known about it, which was released yesterday, and it talks about the police letting down victims and survivors.
Well, the report, which has taken 8 years to complete and cost £6 million, details appalling experiences of vulnerable children. But despite at least 1,400 young girls being abused, the most severe sanction that's been handed out was a written warning.
Well, let's speak to someone who's integral to all of this, and that's Maggie Oliver. Maggie, if you don't know her story, she's a former detective at Greater Manchester Police, and she's now chair of the Maggie Oliver Foundation, and she exposed the poor handling of this case throughout the years. Now that the review has been published, Maggie, I reckon you're probably still not in any way satisfied or pleased.
Good morning, Eamonn. No, it very often feels sort of like Groundhog Day for me, because you've just mentioned the Rotherham review, which was yesterday. The Oldham review was on Monday. And, we've had Rochdale apologies a few weeks ago. I could literally probably cut and paste every single one of these reviews and put a different town or city in it, and you would have the same findings, failures, lack of victim care, victims being blamed, no accountability for any police officers, let alone senior police officers, zero accountability at all. And, how many more times are we going to see it? But what really gets to me, Eamonn, is when I hear a whole series of chief constables, head of Oldham Council, head of Rotherham, trotted out every single time and saying that these are failures of the past. I can tell you categorically from our work now in the Maggie Oliver Foundation that these are not failures of the past. These are failures from today, because things have really not changed. In the foundation, we have two very distinct sides, two sides. One side that looks at emotional support, really for victims and survivors from the past. But we also have a legal advocacy side. And in the legal advocacy, we support victims and today who say that they are going to the police and being fobbed off. And since January alone, when I look at, we're a national charity, but when I look at Greater Manchester Police, in the last 6 months alone, we've referred 33 really, really serious cases to senior officers in GMP, and of those, only one has been resolved. So, the picture is a grim one, and I really want to see, change now. How many times, Eamonn, have you heard me saying this over the years? And yet, roll back. I feel like a broken record, and we're not moving forward. We're just looking at the same failures again and again.
Failures, Maggie, and I want to bring in Liz Kershaw, who's from Rochdale and sitting beside us listening to what you're having to say here. But I'm now confused. I'm confused about, is this a police problem? Is this a paedophile problem? Is this a race problem? And I'm absolutely confused, Liz. What about you?
Well, first of all, Maggie's my heroine. It's a subject close to my heart. It's where I grew up. I just would like to ask Maggie, you're addressing the problems, past and present, but they're a symptom of something. And surely something needs to be done to tackle the causes of this. Do you have talks about this? Are any politicians interested in finding out why we have these two parallel cultures, one attacking the other, and the authorities afraid to do anything about it? How do we make sure that people in a town like Rochdale live in harmony and share the same values?
That's a really good question, Liz. I think it's a combination of many things. I think you cannot avoid the fact that in these grooming gang abuse cases, the vast majority of the perpetrators are Pakistani Muslim men, and the vast majority of victims are young, vulnerable, white children. Now, the question has to be why. I want to see a dialogue opening up within those communities. But you know what? The other thing is that there is that the figures do not reflect ethnicity. They are not counted. And for me, that is a glaring omission that has been there for years. You have to ask, why don't they collect those? Why has there been a reluctance to address the religious and the racial aspects of this crime? Because there is something in that community that says it's okay to abuse a young white child. And actually,
Maggie, I just want to interrupt you. We had a newspaper reviewer here 2 days ago who staunchly, was basically accusing anybody who thought otherwise of being racist, because she was saying that this is simply paedophilia. It does not matter what colour, religion, race you are. This would equally happen, she was saying, in white communities.
I 100% agree with that, Eamonn, 100%, because it does happen everywhere. But there is not a reluctance to address it, to be open about it. And unless you're honest about it, you can't address it. There is something that is acceptable there. If you bring it right up to last night to today, two of the Rochdale abusers have been fighting deportation for many years. One of the men, Adil Khan, got a young 13-year-old child pregnant, young Ruby out of the drama Three Girls. He said yesterday that he wants to remain in this country because he's a role model for his son. Now, within that community, how can he be a role model? Why is he still in the country? And why is it that his own community allow him to continue to live in Rochdale and they don't call him out? So, we don't have honesty about it. I always say we've got abusers in the Catholic Church. How many times have priests been moved from diocese to diocese? I'm not saying that sexual abuse and rape of children is only within this community, but this is the only community where we skirt around it. We have to understand why it's going on. We have to open up a dialogue. We have to go into those communities and we have to address it, because in this country, it is rape. It is not within the law to have sex with a 13-year-old child. And that isn't being racist. That's being truthful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the word that I wanted to bring into this whole conversation, because, the elephant in the room is that people are afraid to say it because they do not want to be called a racist. And it's almost, to call something as it is a worse crime than what the perpetrators have done. Yeah. So how do you address this fear of being called a racist?
Well, I would remind people, Isabel, that if they don't call it out, what they are doing is they are allowing further generations of children to be abused and have their lives destroyed. It is the truth. Sometimes the truth is a difficult truth, but we have skirted around this issue for, I would say, 25 years. Anne Cryer was calling it out in Keighley in the 90s within the community. She was going into the mosques and they didn't wish to address it. 25 years later, we are still not recording the numbers of men within those communities who are convicted of rape. In the foundation, we are collecting those numbers, that data. We need a radical overhaul. And when senior police officers, and I'm talking about chief constables, don't deal with this problem, they need to be held to account. And I feel that until they are held legally to account in a criminal case, I don't really think that we will see the changes that we need. And it is a national problem. It's predominantly in the north of England because that is where these communities predominantly are. But we do need to address it. And if we don't, we are failing our children. Sexual abuse is horrendous.
Yeah, but can you just explain? Can you explain to us, when we talk about these figures here, that despite these 1,400 girls being abused in the way they were, and you talk about victims being let down, survivors let down, but it has been confirmed that no officer in all of this time, despite knowing about things, has lost their job with all of this. So, as a police officer, as a former police officer, is that incompetence? Is that collusion? How would you describe that?
I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot of issues, but I think one of the main things, Eamonn, is that when a victim complains, their complaint goes to the Professional Standards Board, or it goes to the IOPC. And I would view those two branches, but particularly PSB, as an internal investigation. And their absolute priority is to protect the organisation. They all gang together, close ranks, and they cover up the truth. And the Oldham Review talks very clearly about one young child called Sophie, who at the age of 12 went into Oldham Police Station. She was drunk and she'd been sexually abused. The officers there sent her away. She was picked up by somebody in the office and repeatedly raped. Now, she's been trying for 15 years to find out the truth. I took her about 3 weeks ago to read the report for the first time. It was the very first time that she heard the identity of her rapist were known all along. She'd been right through professional standards, through the IOPC, to the Home Office Select Committee, and yet nobody had told her that their identity was known. They had covered up that truth for 15 years. That is what is happening time and time again. Even when I was highlighting these failures in 2011 and 12 as a serving police officer, the grievance procedure covered up for the organisation. I could have said all these things that are being said this week 10 years ago, Eamonn, and yet nobody within GMP at that point would acknowledge I was right, and I don't want to be right, but that is a fact. Yeah. It doesn't take brains of Britain to see what's wrong here, and what we need is people to grab hold of it and say what is wrong and deal with it, not talk about it.
Let's bring Liz back in.
Well, Maggie, I'm glad to read in one of the papers today that Andy Burnham is wading in and being supportive Mayor of Greater Manchester, where many of these crimes were committed. The aspect to this that I'd like to ask you about is these girls are vulnerable. Throughout, we describe these girls as vulnerable girls, and then generally not, if at all, coming from stable, comfortable, loving families. The girls who were in care or runaways, and the responsibility of the local councils within Greater Manchester, for example, or South Yorkshire. How were they being let down by the local government officials that are supposed to be looking after them?
Well, again, Liz, you've hit the nail on the head, because the Oldham Review talks about the cover-up by Oldham Council. And I can tell you that in relation to Sophie, I'll bring it down to an absolute example. Even as recently as February, this review...
What a shame. Yeah. On that key moment there, we lost Maggie Olive, of course, the whistleblower and former detective involved in the Oldham Review, and quite frankly, with a very damning assessment of all the millions that have been spent on that, saying basically concluded what she was saying 10 years ago, and she would have said it for free. But that was Maggie Oliver speaking to us.
Liz, appreciate your take on things as a Rochdale resident or former Rochdale.
I think it's what she would have said. I don't want to put words in her mouth. She's a great woman. Is that there are other public bodies that are equally culpable in all this situation.
Yeah. The question is why?
Yeah.
And what are they frightened of, and what are they resisting? And you know, to me, the biggest crime you could probably commit in this world is a crime against a child. And this abuse to be passed over as if it didn't matter, and it stays with that individual for life. It scars and it shapes somebody for life. This brutalisation of young girls is absolutely terrible.
Unforgivable.
The awful thing is, though, there are people who say it still goes on.
It's gonna. I mean, you know, I could tell you all about Cyril Smith, Jimmy Savile.
Yep.
That, you know, that was ignored, covered up, whatever. Yeah.
We're going to take a belated break. We stayed with that item a little bit longer, but we're going to have a little break and come back with the top stories of the dawn, Neeson, in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Here to chew over a lot of the stories that have been happening today, and we've been covering since 6 o'clock this morning. We've got the journalist Dawn Neeson and the commentator you are on all sorts of things.
Commentator, thank you.
What's getting you today?
Well, I think one of the big talking points today is still Rwanda. And the fact that Boris Johnson is now over there and he's going to be sitting, have a nice cup of tea with Prince Charles.
Has he missed a chance not to be in one of these centres where people are being deported to and actually allaying any fears there may be? We do think this is a popular policy, but should he not be standing there and saying, look, this is where it's at, unless you've got something to hide?
Yeah, well, exactly, he should be. I think they should be a lot more open about what is actually happening on the ground in Rwanda, because even though we know, that the political row that's going on in this country, we don't actually know what's going on out there. And I thought it was particularly interesting as well. I mean, obviously we know Charles's opinion of it, but the archbishops in this country, they were getting upset about it, and they signed a letter saying this is wrong, this should not be happening, it's immoral, without actually talking to the archbishop in Rwanda, who thinks it's actually a good scheme. So it's going to be a very interesting meeting today with Charles on one side, who has quite clearly made his opinion known, even though obviously it was a private conversation. Yeah, of course. and Boris, who's backing this scheme all the way. But I agree with you, Eamonn. What I want to know, we've seen pictures in the papers of something that looks like a really quite nice hotel with a swimming pool, etc., etc. But what is actually going to be happening to the migrants, if we manage to send any over there, when they get on the ground? And I think that would do Boris huge amounts of favours if he actually walked around and said,
this is where
he's
going to have to talk it up, because we had a commentator in today, and she's written a book on the whole country, and the whole country has gone wrong, basically. But, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was only a couple of years ago that Britain was condemning.
Year, at a UN human rights conference in Geneva, British officials robustly called out Rwanda on its record of extrajudicial killings, disappearances and torture. But once the asylum seekers deal was signed, the tone abruptly changed.
You know what? The interesting thing with Rwanda, and I was actually, and I was lucky enough to go there and cover the genocide back in the 90s. And I met some amazing people, Isabel, and I've obviously met a lot of the children who'd lost their parents, and I still keep in contact with some of those, the children, say, who have grown up now, and they're very confused about the image of their country that's being portrayed in Western media because they don't recognise it. Many of the people in Rwanda, the ordinary people, are very pro this scheme. They want it to work. Many of them have been refugees themselves after the genocide. Many of them left the country. The Archbishop himself, who came out and said, no, this is a good scheme, we are welcoming to these people. He has said, I was a refugee, I've lived in exile most of my life. We do understand how
these people are feeling. It's not these people that are a problem, it's the ruling administration, it's the governments. I mean, and that would be like to say that the genocide didn't happen.
Well, no, absolutely, but it's come a long way, and I think the knee-jerk reaction is that we automatically think of the genocide. And, you know, we're talking about sort of how it's been treated in the past. In 2017, an international poll showed that Rwanda was one of the most accepting and welcoming countries for migrants. And this was an international poll. I mean, it was beaten by New Zealand and Iceland, but Rwanda came third. We were 38 out of 138 countries. And so the talk is changing depending on where you're coming from on this situation. And it's as I said, to be a fly on the wall and see what Charles and Boris say to one another.
I suspect that Prince Charles will be quite forthright if he's asked, and if the subject comes up, I don't think he'll hold back, because the meeting is behind closed doors.
It is behind closed doors.
He's entitled to say what he wants.
Yeah,
and we know that Her Majesty does the same in her weekly meetings with the Prime Minister.
Yes.
She wouldn't ever seek to influence the government. She will let them know.
Yes, but Her Majesty has got an entire career out of never complaining or explaining, and Charles hasn't.
Big statue unveiling yesterday in London. This was the Windrush statue attended by the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge.
Now, I wanted to talk about this. It was National Windrush Day yesterday, and obviously, you know, it was just appalling how these people were treated, linking in, obviously, nicely to the Rwanda story. And William and Kate were at Waterloo Station yesterday unveiling this statue, and obviously there weren't that many people around to see it, given the train situation at the moment. And I wanted to talk about it, Eamonn, mostly because it's such an important subject. And William, unlike his grand, was very outspoken on the subject, saying that Black Britain still faces a lot of bigotry, and the future that the Windrush generation sought and deserved has yet come to pass. Now, they're very, very strong words from a member of the royal family, and he is entitled to say them. Whether most people in this country agree with it or not is obviously another matter. But why I wanted to mention about it was the pictures. I mean, the pictures in particular, I think the Metro have done it particularly well today, of Kate and some of the children around the statue. And they're very emotive, very lovely, and Kate has this empathy with youngsters, doesn't she? And I think it was important to mark the day, and with everything else that's happening with this week's, with the strikes and inflation, etc., it is important just to actually think about what happened then. And just a shout out to many of the Windrush generation. I was very, very poorly as a child in Homerton Fever Hospital, and if it wasn't for some of the nurses who were part of that generation, I possibly wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So, you know, many of us owe a huge gratitude to those people.
Do you know, people who were getting off that boat, whatever, when you look at the style of the times, there's not the way people are today, tracky bottoms and T-shirts and whatever.
Little white gloves and dainty.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Amazing. And they
thought very well. And it's
absolutely
a matter of pride.
Yeah, and you can imagine when they were treated so badly, it's like, well, we weren't expecting this whatsoever. There was a fantastic programme on TV last night that was looking back at sort of like black history, black culture, black art in this country since the Windrush generation. and the music was superb. And as you said, Isabel, you know, the clothing, the fashion that we picked up from that generation coming over here, sort of like going into the 60s and 70s, was amazing. And we've forgotten so much about it. It's a very good programme.
Speaking of fashion and people being amazing, Mick Jagger, bit of an icon himself. In fact, you're going to see him on Saturday night, aren't you?
Yeah.
Shaking his hips and moving it like Mick Jagger. And then he's hot-footing it off to Glastonbury.
And he's recovering from COVID.
Yes,
So.
well, this is the point. There's several points I want to make about this story. One that I was tipped off that a certain person may or may not be going to Swagger Like Jagger.
Who? Me?
Yes.
I mean, I could be on my crutch swaggering like Swagger.
And obviously, there's a story in the Daily Mirror today, and it's going back to the free concert the Rolling Stones gave in 1969. A lot different today, where I think the cheapest ticket is around about £95. And it's this iconic outfit that Mick Jagger wore on stage, which is basically a dress. I mean, if you look at Harry Styles today,
he's like a
Mick Jagger was doing
Shakespearean
it.
actor there or something. Yeah.
It looks amazing. And for people that are listening on the radio, it's like a cross between a white smock and a white night dress, isn't it? I mean, it's not something you won't be wearing, I'm assuming, this weekend, Eamonn?
No, I don't think so. I don't
possibly
think you'll
not.
get me like that.
But it's a lovely story about sort of how Jagger is still, you know, at 78, inspiring the youngsters of today.
Well, Harry Styles is definitely just basically trying to copy Mick Jagger, don't you think? And I see some of the outfits that he rocks and even the moves, the hairstyle, everything. He just
inspired. It's inspired.
Yeah, inspired. And yet, I mean, if you saw either of the clothes that those two wear on an ordinary fella down the pub, you would think, what's he wearing?
Yeah, but
what's he up to?
Can you imagine going to Tesco's like that with your other half?
Dawn, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
for
Dawn.
having me.
We've got showbiz news. We've got Ellie Phillips right after this short break. We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well,
back.
We're going to have the showbiz news now with Ellie Phillips on that this morning. Very
Good
good
morning,
to see you.
lovely to see you. Looking lovely and rested after your holiday.
I am. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling rested. Feeling
and here with all the gossip, top story of which is Rupert Murdoch going through his 4th divorce.
I know, this is crazy, isn't it? So this is the New York Times reporting this, and they said they've got a lot of sources who've verified it, and we know that actually Rupert
I think the
Murdoch...
New York Times is his paper.
No, apparently
not. No, it's not.
No,
that's right.
yeah. One of the few he doesn't have. So, he and Jerry Hall are reportedly divorcing after 6 years together. He's just turned 91.
So I'm not sure if he'll manage to get another marriage in after this, but they 6 years happy together. And for her, it's actually her first divorce, technically. So she was with Mick Jagger for 22 years. They got married, but it was annulled. So according to the law, they were never married. So this will technically be her first divorce. What's coming out of all this, the big question is what is going to happen to the fortune? Because he's worth $14 billion. Now, that's a lot of money to divide up there. And people are saying, oh, well, is there a prenup, not a prenup? We know that he definitely did have prenups in the past with Wendy Deng, his third wife. We also know that his second wife, Anna Torv, she banked nearly $2 billion when they divorced. The difference now being, though, obviously, is that he doesn't have any children with Jerry Hall, whereas his previous wives, all three, had children with them all. So they all got stakes in his companies.
Yes. It's all spread out now here. It's all in trusts and whatever.
It's all in trusts and everything like that.
Anyway, you know, he's 91. I don't think he'll be worrying too much.
I know, but I kind of think when you get to that age, why would you bother having a divorce? Like, you know, they seem to have got on so well. They haven't actually been seen together out in public since August last year.
Well, he was at a big party, wasn't he, in the UK here, and all the rumours were swirling. Obviously, why is she not here beside
Maybe the
him?
divorce has been pushed by her.
Possibly. See, this is we don't know. We don't know which side it's come from. We don't know what the reasons are. But
That's always sad when a marriage ends. So we
Yeah.
wish them both well, I suppose. Glastonbury, the big Glasto underway. Look, it's all been pretty amazing pictures coming from Worthy Farm, hasn't it? All the sun shining and the crowds. The rain is about to arrive.
The lightning. Thunder and lightning.
Thunder and lightning. But do you know what? I just don't think when it comes to Glastonbury and you see people there, they're such music lovers that I don't think will dampen their spirits. It might take a few tents down, you know, as it goes, but they will be there. They will be loving the music. Come rain, come shine. And it's so great because it's back for the first time since 2019 because obviously the pandemic meant it couldn't be held. So people have been really desperate to see this and they've got an epic lineup. They've actually got the youngest ever and the oldest ever headliners. So Billie Eilish is going to take the stage on Friday night. She becomes the youngest. She's 20 years old. And then on Saturday night, Sir Paul McCartney, he is going to headline the slot, and he's 80 years old. So that's like what we've got going on there. And then Sunday headliner, we've got Kendrick Lamar, bring a completely different vibe. And then the afternoon, there's called the Legends slot on a Sunday, and that's going to be Diana Ross. So great lineup for the weekend. And there are over 3,000 acts performing. So I'm not going to list them all, don't worry.
Many? 3,000?
3,000.
On all these different stages?
All the different stages and areas and arenas. There's so much going on there.
Have you ever been?
I haven't. I've only ever done a festival once. It didn't go well. It was Leeds Festival. I was in a mosh pit for System of a Down. I was very confused and I was like, it's not for me. I love music, but I think I like it in a comfortable setting.
The only thing about Glastonbury is just the scale of it. It's the size of the site, and it's like walking for days to get from one to the other.
100%.
Oh, sounds wonderful.
Once the mud starts.
Sorry, I'm not there.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it was interesting reading about this today. And realistically, how old is Brad Pitt?
58, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's talking about being on the last leg of his career, and he's right. I mean, he mightn't
Really?
Well, of course.
Do you think so?
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Oh, I don't know, you know, because if you think of, like, there's other actors who come into things in later life.
Well, look, it depends how in demand you are, how you feel within your own mind, if you're marketable or not. I mean, he is Brad Pitt at the end of the day, and whether he can adapt. But I think it's natural for a lot of people as they hit 60 to think, well, what's ahead?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So that's what's come out in this interview. So this was with GQ magazine. He's going to be their August cover star. And he said, I consider I'm on my last leg, my last semester or trimester. And what am I going to do next? What's happening in the future? And people are saying, oh, is he going to retire? But back in like about 3 years ago, he actually told the New York Times that you would see him less and less on camera, in front of the camera, because actually he quite likes the production side of thing, which is what a lot of actors go into.
Clooney and
eventually.
Clint Eastwood are the big people.
And he's good at it. I mean, he was involved with producing like The Big Short, Ad Astra, all did really, really well. But also, as much as he might say he wants to retire, he does have two big films coming up, Bullet Train and Babylon, with Margot Robbie. So, I mean, maybe he's just going to choose fewer?
Yes.
Because, I mean, especially because he's just won his second Oscar recently as well. So, I mean...
And in this interview, is he talking a little bit about his lifestyle and cleaning it up and how he's been sort of not dogged or addicted to cigarettes and alcohol for years, but is he cleaning himself up?
He's trying to clean himself up. I think I think, like you said, when you get to that age of 60 and, like, he's gone through a lot in his life, obviously, you think, OK, well, you know, do I need to be healthier? Do I need to... Where do I see myself? What am I going to do? I've got to look after my body and my mind.
Yes.
And whether that's a change in career or that is, you know, actually, no, I really want to keep working. You know,
I tell you, if only the man was better looking, then he could, you know, he could go on forever.
You'll go on forever, Eamonn.
If only.
Oh,
No wrinkles on a balloon, that's what I say. Thank you very much indeed. That was Ellie Phillips. That's your showbiz. That's your GB News breakfast for today on the television and the radio from Eamonn and Isabel.
Yeah, we'll be back on Monday from 6. Up next, Tom Harwood is here with the briefing. See you on Monday.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Plenty more very warm, hazy sunshine for many of us today, but we are going to start to see more and more thunderstorms breaking out, and there is a Met Office warning in place. Weather fronts close to the far north of Scotland, but actually through today pushing away. It's this one spreading up from the south that's bringing the risk of thunderstorms, and some big downpours are likely in places by this afternoon. Many of us starting with plenty of blue sky and sunshine, but clouding over across the southeast, sunshine turning increasingly hazy, and as the temperatures build, so we are more likely to see thunderstorms breaking out. Very hit and miss, not everywhere seeing them, far from it, but there is the potential for thunderstorms, certainly across the Midlands, East Wales, southern parts of